Yong'an City, the Song family estate. Ever since the battle at the southern frontier wall in his previous life, Song Yongxiang had never gotten another chance to come back here. The city stood at the southeastern edge of Tiandu Nation, bordering Shishui Nation to the east and backed by Yong'an Mountain at its far end. It was, in every sense, a fortress city built on dangerous terrain. Over the past 20 years, Tiandu Nation and Shishui Nation had signed a joint border defense pact. Relying on the southern frontier wall, the two sides linked the Shikong Mountains with the southern wasteland range and built a united defensive line, which in turn boosted Yong'an City's population and economy. The two Scarlet Luan Army Skyguard warships that had escorted them back left for military duty again after docking the Hong shipping merchant vessel at the air harbor. And when Song Yongxiang got off the ship, the captain of that Hong shipping vessel shamelessly came up with every excuse possible to collect a whole stack of autographed photos from him. Just as Song Yongxiang stood there speechless, Uncle Song Mu suddenly appeared behind him and said, "Young master, it's been a while." That single line hit him hard. From his past life until now, it had been far too long since he last heard a greeting from family. To them, it might have only been a few months apart. But to Song Yongxiang, he had spent more than 60 years carrying them in his heart. In his previous life, the entire Song family would meet a loyal but tragic end. 2 months later, when the southern frontier wall fell. Back then, Song Yongxiang had been forcibly sent away by the old master at the very last moment. Luckily, during the long escape that followed, he ran into the black armor guard who had come to reinforce the area, and that was how he barely managed to survive. So when he saw his family again in this life, he reacted like a child. Maybe that was what the warmth of home really felt like. Still, during that brief exchange just now, Song Yongxiang had already sensed that Uncle Song Mu was deliberately suppressing his cultivation. And once he examined it more carefully, he was stunned to realize that Song Mu was actually a mid-stage heaven-rank powerhouse. In his previous life, Song Yongxiang had been far too weak. So weak that he thought the old master was the only heaven-rank expert in the entire Song family. Who would have guessed that Uncle Song Mu, the man who had practically raised him like a nanny since childhood, was actually stronger than the old master? While Song Yongxiang was still sorting through his thoughts, Uncle Song Mu had already asked about Shin Ruowei and her family. Before Song Yongxiang could explain things for them, Shin Ruowei's group politely introduced themselves first and bowed in greeting. The moment he heard their surname, Uncle Song Mu immediately realized that they were probably from the Shin family. And sure enough, Shin Dai was the daughter of Shin Hua, the head of the Shin family. In truth, she had already guessed earlier that Song Yongxiang was likely the young master of the Song family. But now, she was even more shaken by just how deep the Song family's foundation ran. Even a single steward from their household was stronger than her own niece. Since there had never been any conflict between the two families, Uncle Song Mu politely offered to arrange a flying vessel and personally send them back home. But Shin Dai still declined the gesture with courtesy, saying that the Shin family's driver had already arrived at the gate. Before leaving, they thanked Song Yongxiang once again for saving them, and invited him to visit the Shin family whenever he had the time. In response, Song Yongxiang smiled and asked Shin Dai's daughter, Xiao Wen, whether she had memorized his contact information. He even told her that whenever she wanted to see him in the future, she could just call him, and he would take her out to eat something good. The moment she heard that, Xiao Wen lit up with excitement. Sure enough, kids really were all about food and fun, but the little girl was sharp too. She immediately added one more condition, saying that next time she came looking for him, she wanted to bring her cousin Shin Ruwei along as well. That instantly left Shin Ruwei blushing at the side. Still, as long as Xiao Wen was happy, she could bring whoever she wanted. After all, in his previous life, Song Yongxiang had promised that he would become her exclusive Star Soul Master. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, the two families finally went their separate ways and started heading home. After this parting, there was no telling when they would meet again. Song Yongxiang could only hope that her whole family would stay safe and live well. Just as he and Uncle Song Mu were about to head toward the inner landing platform, Miss Jinghua suddenly ran out and called for them to stop. Judging from the look on her face, she clearly had something urgent to say to Song Yongxiang. And sure enough, the moment she caught up to him, Miss Jinghua slipped a small note into his hand and told him that she would be staying in Yong'an City for half a month. If he had time, she hoped they could find a chance to sit down and have a long talk. After saying that, she hurried off again, leaving Song Yongxiang completely baffled. What exactly was she trying to say just now? While he was still trying to process it, Uncle Song Mu reminded him from the side. The old master has arranged a family banquet tonight. Your fiancé, Kong Xingxin, will be attending as well. The moment Song Yongxiang heard that name, his temper flared. In his previous life, right after he returned from the Desert of Death, Kong Xingxin had shown up at his door with a heaven-rank expert from the Kong family just to break off the engagement. And then there was tonight's family banquet. Those uncles and cousins who used to look down on him. This time around, he was going to see who still dared to put on airs in front of him. By the time they arrived at the landing platform, Xia Biji, the exclusive driver of the Song family's eastern courtyard, was already there waiting for them. Once they got on the flying vessel, Xiabijie suddenly brought up Song Yongxiang's breakthrough into Earth rank and asked out of curiosity whether his soul vein defect had already been cured. The moment he said that, Uncle Song Mu's face turned serious, and he immediately told him to focus on flying and stop asking questions like that. That caught Song Yongxiang a little off guard. Looks like the waters inside his own family ran deep too. Even a driver was a mid-stage heaven-rank powerhouse, and judging from Song Mu's reaction, he clearly already knew about it. Looks like this trip home was really about to get interesting. On the way back, Song Yongxiang asked Uncle Song Mu to investigate the identities of those two people from the lower domain nation, because the timing of their appearance in Yang'an City made him suspicious. While handing over the stored value card they had previously used to compensate him, Uncle Song Mu explained, "Right now, the lower domain nation is split among 6 noble tribes, divided into 3 major factions that keep each other in check. The cautious faction, led by the Samarin family, controls technology and the economy. The expansionist faction, led by the Mulu family, holds most of the military power. And then there's the neutral faction, led by the old noble Sukum family, which has deep roots in politics. But in truth, they're really just puppets of the Restorationists. As for the Restorationists, they're the remnants of the old empire from more than 400 years ago. After the empire collapsed, they refused both Milun's hegemony and Tiandu nation's legitimacy. And among them, the strongest force is the Huyang clan. For centuries, they've been trying to restore the glory of a unified heavenly empire. So strictly speaking, they aren't really lower domain people at all. They're just a group of pitiful exiles, staring toward the central plains they once called home, yet unable to return." After finishing his explanation of the lower domain nation's factional structure, Uncle Song Mu noticed the note Miss Jinghua had given Song Yongxiang and smoothly brought up his fiancée Kong Xingxin again. The second that name came up, Song Yongxiang felt annoyed. But since neither side had fully torn things apart yet, he could only brush it off awkwardly for now. Still, after thinking it over, Song Yongxiang asked whether it was possible that the lower domain nation and Milun nation were secretly working together to pincer Tiandu nation from both sides. Uncle Song Mu said the odds were low, since that would go directly against the core interests of both the cautious faction and the neutral faction. As long as the old monsters of the Samarin and Sukum families were still alive, something like that was basically impossible. By the time their conversation was winding down, the flying vessel had already arrived at the landing platform on the eastern compound of the Juan Marquis estate. At that moment, several gate guards were sitting at the entrance courtyard playing cards. Judging by the look on their faces, they had probably been losing badly. But the instant they saw Xiabijie personally open the door and help Song Yongxiang off the vessel, they hurriedly cleared away the card table, afraid Song Yongxiang would drag them into another whole afternoon of gambling. Looks like Song Yongxiang's reputation in the Song family was still as terrible as ever. Still, when Ma-san, one of the gate guards, saw Song Yongxiang, he happily stood up from his wheelchair to greet him. After not seeing him for so long, the old rascal didn't forget to tease him either, asking whether he had brought back a granddaughter-in-law for the old marquis this time. But the moment Song Yongxiang shook his hand and casually sensed his cultivation, he discovered that Ma-san was also a mid-stage heaven-rank powerhouse. When Song Yongxiang didn't answer, Uncle Ma grinned and asked whether he wanted to play a couple rounds of cards first or head straight to the central courtyard to greet the old marquis. As for that question, Uncle Song Mu had already made the choice for him, because the old marquis was already waiting for him in the central courtyard. The second he heard that, Uncle Ma looked downright miserable. He had probably not won enough in those last few rounds. So to cheer him up, Song Yongxiang said he could join him at their old spot another day for a couple drinks and a few more rounds of cards. But the old rascal instantly perked up and said that when the time came, he would arrange Song Yongxiang's favorite full-service outing for him. He even added that he had heard Chengxiao Pavilion and Red Sleeve House had just brought in some new tea, and he had been waiting for Song Yongxiang to come back so they could go sample it together. Song Yongxiang and Uncle Song Mu ignored that nonsense on the spot. Song Yongxiang only tossed out that he had already left the group, then walked off with Song Mu. After they were gone, Xiabijie strolled over as well, and casually joked that old Ma was truly crippled in body, but strong in spirit. Still, the real reason he came over was to tell old Ma that Song Yongxiang had already broken through to Earth rank. The moment he heard that, old Ma's smile faded, replaced by a rare, thoughtful look. He had already sensed Song Yongxiang's cultivation, and he also knew that Song Yongxiang had quietly probed his strength during that handshake. One was a driver, one was a gate guard. So why were both of them this terrifyingly strong? In Song Yongxiang's memory, Uncle Ma had always been the gate guard of the eastern courtyard ever since he was little. And because the man was so entertaining, Song Yongxiang had always been especially close to him. Uncle Ma had taught him all kinds of card tricks and gambling routines. Even things like sleight of hand cheating and sneaking around to pick locks were skills Song Yongxiang had learned from him back then. Who would have guessed that this gate guard, who always presented himself as only black rank on the surface, was actually another mid-stage heaven rank powerhouse. By the time Song Yongxiang came back to himself, he and Uncle Song Mu had already arrived before the old Marquis. The old Marquis only glanced at Song Yongxiang once, then flashed right in front of him the next instant, and enthusiastically praised his strength. After that, he directly invited Song Yongxiang to the study for a game of Go and a talk, clearly eager to hear about everything he had gone through over the past year. Even from that brief encounter alone, Song Yongxiang could already tell that the old master's aura had absolutely reached the half-saint level. On the surface, he only appeared to be at early-stage heaven rank, but that aura could not be mistaken. If anything, he was probably even stronger than Elder Zhu. In his previous life, Song Yongxiang had been too weak to perceive any of their true cultivation. But now that he could finally see through it, the truth was shocking. The Song family had been hiding far more trump cards than he ever imagined, and that was exactly the problem. If the Song family of his previous life still failed to survive the Beast Tide, even with 1 half-saint and 3 mid-stage heaven-ranked experts holding the line, then didn't that mean all the preparations Song Yongxiang had made so far were still nowhere near enough to turn the tide? And right at that moment, Song Yongxiang suddenly sensed a trace of saint-rank aura. It was so weak, it felt like a dying candle in the wind, as though it could go out at any second. But he knew his senses were not wrong. Could the Song family still be hiding a saint-rank expert? And if so, which exclusive Star Soul general belonged to that person? The more Song Yongxiang thought about it, the more troubled he became. Because the more hidden cards the Song family had, the more it proved that his current preparations were still far from enough. At this point, there was only one thing left to do. He had to find a way to push all of them onto the path to sainthood together. Soon enough, the two of them sat down in the study and began a game of Go. But after only a short while, the old master smiled and said that next time, he would not go easy on him anymore, because he had already noticed that Song Yongxiang's skill at the board had also improved drastically, along with his strength. Song Yongxiang was left speechless. Seriously? He had already done his best to suppress his skill to about 30%, and the old man still saw through it. Sure enough, the older the man, the sharper the eye. Once the old master realized the current game was already beyond saving, he instructed Uncle Song Mu to leave the room and shut the door behind him. That could only mean one thing. What the old master was about to say next was definitely important. Otherwise, he would never have deliberately sent everyone else away. After Uncle Song Mu left, the old master had Song Yongxiang go over the match with him and review the game they had just played. Song Yongxiang immediately guessed what this was about. The old master was probably worried that someone might be listening from outside, so he chose to speak through the game instead. Taking the lead, Song Yongxiang carefully asked whether the old master had already received news about what happened in Yuanding City. Sure enough, the old master said he had already learned about it from the news. He knew that Song Yongxiang had healed his inborn soul vein defect and had become the host of the Star Soul General, Zhu Si. Song Yongxiang knew very well that if he outright said he had returned from 60 years in the future, it would sound far too unbelievable. It would be much easier to explain it another way. For example, he could say that he had accidentally entered a secret realm and, inside an illusion array there, witnessed visions of the next full 60 years. That kind of story would be far easier for the old master to accept. After settling on that explanation, Song Yongxiang began to say that everything he had now came from an incredible opportunity he encountered inside an ultra-ancient secret realm. But before he could even finish half the sentence, the old master raised a hand and cut him off, telling him instead to pay attention to the mistaken move from their previous game. Then, looking thoroughly pleased with himself, the old master moved that chess piece to a completely different position. Song Yongxiang did not fully understand what he meant at first, but no matter how he looked at it, that single move still could not reverse the losing position that had already taken shape across the board. After Song Yongxiang set the piece back into place, the old master slowly said that when a game was lost, it could still be replayed and reviewed, so long as every piece on the board remained where it was supposed to be. In that case, all the pieces on the board were effectively going through that review together. But if one piece happened to jump off the board and even became the player instead, then the entire game would become something completely different. The moment he heard those words, Song Yongxiang understood. That piece that had jumped off the board was clearly referring to him. Did that mean the old master already knew he had been reborn? At the same time, inside the city lord's manor of Yong'an City, Song Yongxiang's fiancée, Kong Xingxin, was in the middle of a heated argument with her father, Kong Fan, over the marriage alliance between the Kong and Song families. Kong Fan was strongly against breaking off the engagement. He knew better than anyone that if Song Yongxiang's father, Song Lang, had not helped the Kong family back then, they would never have risen to where they stood today. On top of that, Kong Fan had already heard about Song Yongxiang turning the tide in Yuanding City, which only made him even more certain that this marriage absolutely could not be cancelled. And that night, both father and daughter were also going to attend the Song family banquet. But faced with all of her father's persuasion, Kang Jingxin merely curled her lip and said dismissively, "So what? My brother Xinjia is definitely way stronger than him." The instant he heard that name, Kang Fan got angry. How capable could some street orphan possibly be? But Kang Jingxin kept talking as if she had not heard him. In her eyes, brother Xinjia had already trained for 2.5 years, and by now, he had even become the leader of the White Dragon Gang. More than that, Xinjia had secretly told her that in about a month, he would likely become the host of the Star Soul General, Xiao Ren. So in her opinion, even if Song Yangxiang had become the host of Zuoxiai, he still could not compare to how hard her brother Xinjia had worked. Just as the words left her mouth, a voice of approval suddenly came from the direction of the balcony. The one who spoke was none other than the old master of the Kong family. The old man had only just broken through to early stage heaven rank, yet he was already arrogant beyond measure, saying that the Song family was nothing special and that if she did not want to marry in, then so be it. The moment Kong Fan and his daughter heard the old master confirm that he had broken through the heaven rank bottleneck, both of them were shocked and overjoyed, hurrying forward to congratulate him. Right after that, they impatiently asked the question they cared about most. Compared to Song Jingzong of the Song family, who was stronger now? And that shameless old man answered without the slightest embarrassment, saying that Song Jingzong had been stuck at early stage heaven rank all these years. Even though he himself had only just broken through, he still had every confidence that he could go head-to-head with the Song family. Hearing even her own grandfather talk like that, Kang Jingxin became even more reckless. She brazenly declared that if anyone in the Song family refused to agree to breaking off the engagement, then they could just beat them until they did. Even Kong Fan, her own father, found those words hard to listen to. After all, no matter what had become of them, the Song family was still one of Tiandu Nation's great aristocratic houses. Even if they had declined somewhat, this was not the kind of thing you could say out loud and tear apart so openly. Hearing all that, old Master Kong Zheng immediately made his stance clear. He said he also supported his granddaughter's decision to break off the engagement, and in his eyes, Sun Xia and Kong Shengxin were the truly perfect match. As he saw it, marrying into the Song family would bring the Kong family nothing more than a few decades of stable comfort. But if the future host of the Star Soul General Xiao Ren were willing to marry into the Kong family instead, that would be a completely different story. Forget a mere century of wealth and glory. They might even have a real shot at returning to the Kong main line in Zhongzhou and reclaiming their roots. On top of that, now that he himself had already broken through to heaven rank, Kong Zheng felt the Kong family was already on roughly equal footing with the Song family. And if they could pull in an orphan like Sun Xia, have him marry into the family, and then pour all their resources into raising him, then the Kong family would be able to crush the Song family in the future. The moment those words were spoken, even Kong Fan felt that this path had huge potential, because it was something he had never seriously considered before. So, old Master Kong immediately asked his granddaughter whether she could truly guarantee that Sun Xia would definitely become the host of Xiao Ren. At the same time, he pressed further and asked whether she was certain Sun Xia would be willing to marry into the Kong family. Kong Jingxin answered with complete confidence. She said her dear brother Xin Xia would never lie to her. And as for marrying into the Kong family, that would not be a problem either, because the two of them had already crossed that line and become fully intimate. The moment he heard that, old Master Kong was overjoyed. He even shouted that he wanted to head straight to the Song family and break off the engagement right now. But before long, father and daughter both started worrying about what excuse they could use to call off the marriage properly. Originally, they had planned to use Song Yongxiang's defective soul veins as leverage, but that excuse was obviously useless now. Yet old Master Kong was arrogant to the extreme. He declared that they did not need any excuse at all. Now that he had become a heaven rank expert, the fist of the strong was reason enough. He even said he was already prepared. If Song Jingzong dared to intervene, he had no problem turning hostile on the spot. And the thing he was relying on most was actually the 3-star strengthening pill that Song Yongxiang had previously sold to the Hong Merchant Guild in Yuanding City. Meanwhile, back at the Song family estate, the moment old Master Song said that a chess piece had jumped out of the board and become the player, Song Yongxiang immediately understood that the old man had likely sensed something unusual. But right after that, the old master casually added that he had only wanted to undo a single move, nothing more. Then he gestured for Song Yongxiang to continue and finish the story about the secret realm. That only left Song Yongxiang even more confused. What exactly was this old fox playing at? At that point, he had no choice but to keep going. Still, at the beginning of the story, he gave it a little artistic adjustment. He explained everything as an experience in which he had entered some ultra-ancient secret realm and accidentally stumbled into a special illusion space. Inside that illusion, he had seen that, 1 month later, the southern wasteland would be swallowed by a beast tide on a scale never seen before. And that was the real reason he had rushed home so desperately, because in that illusion, he had personally seen the Song family's soldiers wiped out to the last man in that battle. That meant they had to start preparing immediately, resist the coming disaster, and preserve the Song family before it was too late. And after devouring Yong'an City, that beast tide would continue surging northward, dealing a devastating blow to Tiandu Nation's overall military strength. The direct consequence of that would be Milan Nation taking advantage of the opening and eventually triggering the final battle at Tiandu City. After that battle, Song Yongxiang would end up wandering in exile all the way to Xishui Nation, where he would eventually come under the protection of the Empress. And after that, Song Yongxiang simply told the old master about the full 60 years of drifting, struggle, and survival that followed. During all that time, Uncle Song Mu remained outside the study, standing guard without taking a single step away while waiting for their conversation to end. But after 2 full hours passed, he still had not seen Song Yongxiang or the old Marquis come out. Instead, what arrived first was the hurried voice of Song Jin, the steward from the central courtyard. Song Jin came over in a rush and immediately asked whether the old Marquis was still inside the study, because he had something extremely urgent that needed to be reported at once. Seeing how anxious he was, Song Mu frowned and asked what could possibly have happened to make him this flustered. Faced with that question, old Jin could only lower his voice and tell him in the most guarded way possible that person's condition had taken a turn for the worse. Clearly, the secrecy surrounding this matter inside the Song family had been taken to an extreme, to the point that even Uncle Song Mu had no idea who that person actually was. Just as old Jin was about to push open the study door and go in directly, Uncle Song Mu raised a hand and stopped him, because he knew perfectly well that the conversation between Song Yongxiang and the old Marquis was just as important, and there was no way anyone could be allowed to barge in and interrupt it. At the same time, inside the study, Song Yongxiang's story had finally reached its final chapter. He spoke of how humanity's last stronghold on the northern continent had used self-destruction to preserve the final bloodline of the human race, and said that it was only after witnessing that moment that he awakened from the illusion. But even to Song Yongxiang himself, that story felt absurd beyond words. He could not tell whether it had truly been nothing more than a dream within an illusion, or whether he had actually returned from 60 years in the future. Yet what was strange was that after hearing everything, the old master suddenly murmured under his breath, "What? A whole full cycle of 60 years? She never told me it would take this long." Those words instantly sent a chill down Song Yongxiang's spine. Who exactly was that she? And what did the old master really mean by what he had just said? Then the old master suddenly asked him whether the Star Lord system truly had the power to copy the origin Star Soul General of another host. Because the moment he heard that Song Yongxiang could copy origin Star Soul Generals, he realized that this was the very double insurance his daughter-in-law had spoken of all those years ago. Faced with that question, Song Yongxiang no longer hid the truth and admitted it outright. That was why the people in Yuanding City had mistaken him for the host of Zuo-Ci, even though Zuo-Ci's soul jade really was in his possession. And at this point in time, if there was anyone he could truly trust without reservation, it was only the old master. After hearing that confirmation from Song Yongxiang himself, the old master immediately warned him never to tell any outsider about the Star Lord system again. From now on, he was to continue presenting himself as the host of Zuo-Ci and keep the system completely hidden. Song Yongxiang agreed that this caution made perfect sense. In his previous life, he had never truly tried to hide this secret either, but the first time he actually copied a Star Soul General had only happened 3 years later. So back then, he had never treated it as something especially urgent. After saying all that, the old master finally told him in a grave voice that it was time to hand something over to him. It was something left behind by Song Yongxiang's mother, and everything the old master knew about these matters had originally come from her, because she had once foretold that one day, Song Yongxiang would suddenly become extraordinarily powerful. His soul veins would heal on their own, and he would even claim with his own mouth that he had crossed through time and space. The meaning behind those words made Song Yongxiang's heart quake. Could it be that his mother had also been a time traveler? Otherwise, how could she possibly have known any of this? The old master then continued, saying that she had specifically told him not to be shocked when that day came, and to believe every single word Song Yongxiang said without condition. After that, he was to personally hand that box over to Song Yongxiang. And in the end, she had only left behind one final sentence. The laws of time are not something human power can defy. Beneath the star web, all things are part of the game. That sentence completely stunned Song Yongxiang. She even knew about the star web, something that should not have been known in this era, or even within the ordinary logic of this world. Just who exactly had his mother been? The old master also said that the earlier board review had actually been his attempt to imitate what Song Yongxiang's mother had once done. But even after all these years, he still had not grasped its true meaning. So Song Yongxiang would have to take it back and slowly figure it out for himself. But just then, a violently powerful wave of soul power suddenly erupted from the direction of the Song family's central courtyard. Yet almost as soon as it burst out, that soul power began visibly weakening at an alarming rate. Song Yunxiang and the old master sensed the change at almost the exact same moment. So before the old master could say another word, he threw open the door and rushed out, calling for Song Yunxiang to follow him toward the central courtyard. Along the way, Steward Jin hurried after them and urgently reported, "That person's condition has already become extremely bad." On the way to the central courtyard, Song Yunxiang quietly probed Steward Jin's cultivation, only to find that the man appeared to be at peak black rank. That, oddly enough, made things feel even stranger. Could it be that the truly unusual ones were only the people from the Song family's eastern courtyard? As for why Song Yunxiang was coming along with them to the central courtyard, Steward Jin clearly could not understand it. In his eyes, Song Yunxiang was still nothing more than the useless young master born with defective soul veins. But the old master spoke calmly and said that Song Yunxiang now had the right to know these matters, and that the time had finally come for him to see the Song family's true inner secrets. Before long, the group arrived at the private elevator in the Song family's central courtyard, the one that supposedly led to the secluded cultivation chamber. Song Yunxiang remembered it clearly. Back then, this had only ever been the elevator to the cultivation chamber. Could it be that beneath the Song family estate, there was actually an even deeper hidden world? Sure enough, when the elevator doors slowly opened, Song Yunxiang immediately realized that a whole different world lay beyond them. A vast underground paradise hidden from the surface. The place not only had a full artificial lighting system, but it was also protected by arrays designed specifically to block soul power fluctuations. That alone was enough to show just how terrifying the Song family's foundation really was. When they reached the underground villa, the old master stopped and ordered Uncle Song Mu and Steward Jin to stand guard outside, while he personally brought Song Yunxiang in with him. But the moment he stepped inside, Song Yunxiang discovered that the Song family had gone to such absurd lengths, all for the sake of taking care of a single old man roughly the same age as the old master. That only made the man's identity even more intriguing, and the answer was revealed almost immediately. When Song Jingjiang walked to the bedside, he respectfully addressed the man as third uncle. In other words, the old man before them was Song Yunxiang's third great uncle. So the saint rank soul power fluctuation from earlier really had come from him, but that only raised an even bigger question. In his previous life, Song Yunxiang had never once heard of such a person, and if this man truly possessed saint rank cultivation, then he was almost certainly the host of some origin Star Soul general. So what exactly had happened inside the Song family in the previous timeline for someone like this to vanish completely from public knowledge? After being awakened, third great uncle slowly opened his eyes. His voice was weak, but still steady. The very first thing he said was that he could already feel his lifespan running out, and that at most, he likely had less than a month left to live. After that, the old master introduced Song Yunxiang to third great uncle. Judging from the situation, this was probably the first time third great uncle had ever truly met him in person. Still, it was obvious he had already heard plenty about Song Yunxiang. He not only knew the names of Song Yunxiang's parents, but also knew that he had been born with defective soul veins. But when Song Yunxiang stepped forward to pay his respects, third great uncle immediately saw through him and realized that he had already reached early stage Earth rank, and that his soul vein defect had been completely healed. Standing before a genuine Star Soul general host, Song Yunxiang instantly activated the Star Lord system and tried to copy the man's origin Star Soul general. But strangely enough, the system gave no response at all. There was not even a failed copy notification. That made Song Yunxiang's heart sink. What was going on? Why had the Star Lord system gone completely silent? This was the first time he had ever encountered something like this. But right at that moment, third great uncle's condition suddenly took a sharp turn for the worse. Saint rank soul power began spilling wildly out of his body, and that kind of pressure was obviously not something ordinary people could endure. So the old master moved almost instantly, stepping in front of Song Yunxiang to shield him from the impact. Fortunately, Song Yunxiang had faced scenes like this countless times in his previous life, so even under the assault of that soul power, he still remained composed and steady. That, in turn, completely shocked the old master and filled him with delight. He had never expected even saint rank fluctuations to fail to injure Song Yunxiang. After all, even he himself felt real pressure dealing with it. Thankfully, third great uncle managed to suppress the rampaging soul power again before long. Otherwise, the entire house might have been shaken apart on the spot. As his lifespan drained away, his body had become like a cracked leather ball, constantly leaking soul power through the fractures. But once he stabilized himself, he could not help wondering why Song Yunxiang had not been injured by his aura. Then, after another thought, he decided it actually made sense. After all, Song Yunxiang was the child of those two people, and it was obvious that the old master intended to cultivate him as the family's true focus. The old master did not deny it. He admitted it openly, and went on to tell third-grade uncle that Song Yongxiang had encountered a great opportunity inside an ultra-ancient secret realm, and had seen the future in which the southern wasteland beast tide would swallow Yong'an City a little over a month later. The moment he heard that, third-grade uncle's expression darkened. He immediately asked whether the Song family could still survive such a catastrophe. Faced with that question from an elder, Song Yongxiang stopped holding back and directly told him that, in his previous life, the entire Song family had died as loyal martyrs in battle. That answer stunned both elders all over again. Neither of them could easily accept that the Song family would truly end in such a way. The old master then said in a heavy voice that whether this future was real or not, they had to prepare in advance. And because of that, some of the Song family's deepest secrets had finally reached the point where Song Yongxiang needed to know them. And with third-grade uncle's final days already approaching, he decided that he would personally tell Song Yongxiang the truth. His name was Song Bingchuan. He had once been one of the 8 generals of Tiandu Nation, and now he was also the 8th-generation host of the Star Soul General Co. Ren. Since Song Yongxiang had never once seen third-grade uncle appear in his previous life, this was the first time he had ever learned that the Song family had been passing down the Star Soul General Cao Ren all along. The revelation left Song Yongxiang utterly shaken. What confused him even more was that the Star-Lord system could not copy third-grade uncle's Star Soul General at all, which was completely different from anything he had experienced before. In response, third-grade uncle calmly said that, in about a month or so, his lifespan would likely run out anyway. So the fact that Song Yongxiang never saw this part in the future was actually perfectly understandable. Just as he said, in the future Song Yongxiang had seen in his previous life, the one who eventually became the host of Cao Ren was a young man named Xunxia. Hearing that future, third-grade uncle could only accept reality with bitter resignation. Once his lifespan ended, Cao Ren would naturally leave his body and go seek out a new host. At that, the old master immediately said that he had heard there were pills in the southern continent capable of extending lifespan. If they could obtain even one of them, then even if the Song family had to empty its entire fortune, it would still be worth it. Hearing that, a related memory flashed through Song Yongxiang's mind. The 7-star life-extending pill was said to prolong life by 3 to 5 years. If it was 8-star quality, then it could extend life by 5 to 10 years. And the legendary 9-star longevity pill was even said to grant a full extra 30 years. The moment Song Yongxiang said that, the old master's eyes lit up. He immediately began wondering whether Song Yongxiang might be able to get such pills through the second prince, since Song Yongxiang had genuinely saved his life before. But Song Yongxiang said they did not need to rely on the second prince's resources for this just yet, because the 3 pills he had just mentioned were all things he could refine himself. The moment he said that, the old master was overjoyed. Even so, joy was one thing, and belief was another. He still found it hard to believe that Song Yongxiang actually knew alchemy too. In response, Song Yongxiang patted the old master's hand and told him not to worry. Refining 8-star and 9-star pills was still a bit of a stretch at his current level, but if it was only a 7-star life-extending pill, he had absolute confidence. Still, words alone were not enough. What the old master truly worried about was the success rate. After all, even the royal alchemists could only refine up to 6-star pills, and their success rate was painfully low. To completely erase that doubt, Song Yongxiang directly took out the pills he had refined earlier on the airship. That move shocked even third-grade uncle, because he could clearly sense that the storage card contained pills above the 7-star level, and his senses were right. That was the 8-star Heavenly Spirit pill Song Yongxiang had refined on the way home. Once consumed, it could permanently raise a person's cultivation by 1 minor realm. Though that effect only worked the first time. Song Yongxiang had originally prepared that pill as a gift for the old master. Since the timing was right, he simply handed it over now. As for whether it would still be useful to someone already at peak heaven rank, that was something the old master would have to judge for himself. At that point, the old master finally believed him completely. He even declared on the spot that from this moment on, Song Yongxiang could exercise authority equivalent to that of the family head, and the entire Song family would obey his orders. The old master had only one request, that Song Yongxiang must refine a life-extending pill for third-grade uncle. Even so, Song Yongxiang told him not to rush. He wanted to examine third-grade uncle's body first. If there were other problems, he would rather solve everything at once. But when Song Yongxiang reached over to check his pulse, third-grade uncle suddenly switched to his left hand and told him that his right arm was actually a bionic prosthetic. In that great war back then, he had nearly died after losing the entire right half of his body. But that was also what allowed him to fake his death and remain hidden beneath the Song family estate ever since. Hearing that, Song Yongxiang instantly understood. No wonder the Star-Lord system had shown no reaction earlier. He had simply overlooked the real issue. But then another question surfaced in his mind. That prosthetic did not look like something from this era at all. It was probably ancient civilization technology excavated from some forgotten ruin. This time, after Song Yongxiang made real contact with third-grade uncle's left hand, the Star-Lord system finally sent a prompt saying it had begun reading the information of the other party's Star Soul General. Right after that, the system began copying the Star Soul General, Co Ren. But just as the process was about to finish, an error warning suddenly appeared, saying that the system was currently repairing 7% of corrupted data. Song Yongxiang guessed that this was most likely caused by third-grade uncle's incomplete physical body. At present, even his secondary Star Soul veins were in a damaged and incomplete state. With that in mind, Song Yongxiang directly asked whether third-grade uncle's cultivation had failed to improve at all ever since that grave injury back then, and the answer was exactly what he expected. Not only had third-grade uncle never advanced again, but even now, he still had to consume large amounts of pills just to maintain his current realm and slow down the rate at which his cultivation kept declining. At that point, Song Yongxiang had fully grasped third-grade uncle's condition. His plan now was to go out first and gather the ingredients needed for the life-extending pill. As for regrowing the missing right half of third-grade uncle's body, he would think of a way to handle that step by step afterward. The moment Song Yongxiang said that second half out loud, it completely shattered third-grade uncle's understanding all over again. He had never imagined that there could actually be a way for a ruined body to grow back, but all of that was something for later. For now, Song Yongxiang first handed over a 5-star spring returning pill. It could not extend third-grade uncle's lifespan, but it could at least ease the physical pain tormenting his body. Before Song Yongxiang left, the old master specifically reminded him to move on this matter as quickly as possible. The entire Song family would back him with everything they had. It was only after Song Yongxiang stepped back into the elevator heading up to the surface that he finally had time to go over what had just happened with the Star-Lord system. Even now, the system was still repeatedly warning him that, due to unknown causes, the Star Soul General data had been damaged. The good news was that the system was actively marking the damaged sections and could reconstruct that portion of the data. According to the repair progress given by the system, Song Yongxiang still had 1,452,980 seconds left before he would truly obtain the Star Soul General, Tao Ren. Meanwhile, during the time Song Yongxiang had been talking with the old master and the others, the maids in charge of the Song family's eastern courtyard had already been running around in a frenzy. After all, this was the day their infamous playboy young master was finally coming home. As Song Yongxiang's personal maid, Lian Yi had been worked half to death all day. Seeing how hard she was cleaning, Songlen from next door could not help reminding her of all the ways the young master had bullied her before. But Lian Yi did not care in the slightest. Instead, she told Songlen not to slander the young master, and while saying it, a shy blush even crept onto her face. Seeing that Lian Yi had already prepared all of Song Yongxiang's favorite incense, Songlen genuinely could not understand how she had somehow fallen for a useless guy like him. The second Songlan called Song Yongxiang trash. Lian Yi immediately got upset and shot back that young master Yongxiang could cultivate normally now and was not a cripple anymore. Sure enough, love really did make people see beauty where nobody else could. But in Songlen's eyes, even if the young master was no longer a cripple, he was still a shameless pervert. That comment instantly made Lian Yi even angrier. After they finished cleaning Song Yongxiang's room, they joined the others in tidying up the living hall. During all that, Songlen kept joking about how the young master had once tricked Lian Yi and Zissou into bathing together with him. By that point, even King Dai, the head maid of the eastern courtyard, could not stand it anymore. She immediately scolded them, saying this was work time, not the moment to get that unruly, especially since the young master would be back soon. But right after those words left her mouth, Zissou started causing a scene again on the other side. She was practically glowing with anticipation, babbling about how she could not wait for the young master to come back so she could eat with him. In truth, King Dai had already noticed that Zissou had been slacking off on the side the whole time. But even after getting scolded, Zissou still wore that same playful, shameless grin without changing at all. And Zissou was quick-witted too. She instantly claimed she needed to go to the bathroom, clearly trying to use it as an excuse to escape King Dai's lecture. That kind of behavior was basically the perfect example of someone finding an excuse the second real work showed up. But everyone else in the eastern courtyard was already so used to it that no one even blinked. Looking at her like that, the head maid could only wave her away helplessly and tell her to hurry up and get lost, instead of standing there bothering everyone else while they worked. The second she got permission, Zissou happily skipped off toward the kitchen in search of food, completely forgetting that she was supposed to be a maid. But when she passed through the courtyard, she happened to run into the probationary maid who had just been transferred in. Zissou, who could never sit still, immediately copied the head maid's usual tone and swagger, and went over to tease the newcomer. But this probationary maid, Suin, did not respond to her at all. She did not even bother greeting her before turning around to leave. That instantly pissed Zissou off. She rushed up and threatened her, saying that if she wanted to become a full maid sooner, she had better listen to her seniors properly. Otherwise, Zissou would have her sent back to the outer courtyard to haul buckets of filth every single day. Just when the whole thing was about to spiral out of control, Song Yongxiang happened to appear right behind Zissou and casually pinned her in place with one hand. The moment she saw Song Yongxiang, Zissou's whole attitude flipped on the spot. In an instant, she turned into a starry-eyed fangirl and stared at him like he was the only thing in the world. Right after that, Zissou came over with tears and snot all over her face, arms wide open as she tried to throw herself into Song Yongxiang's chest. Good thing Song Yongxiang reacted fast and grabbed her before she could. But at that exact moment, the probationary maid named Suin was staring at him with a dark, gloomy look, as if she were already plotting something in silence. That kind of cold gaze immediately put Song Yongxiang on alert. He had no memory of anyone like her in the estate, not even in his previous life. And on top of that, she was dressed in a probationary maid's uniform. Zissou, still puffed up with annoyance, added from the side that this girl had just been transferred in from the outer courtyard, and that she had no figure, no looks, and only average work skills on top of that. But Song Yongxiang had no interest in listening to Zissou keep ranting. He immediately activated the Star-Lord system and scanned the new maid directly. Sure enough, there was definitely something wrong with her. How could a normal person possibly have something like that hidden inside their body? Based on the aura and cultivation traces inside her, Song Yongxiang instantly judged that she was another Milun infiltrator. And with the help of some kind of miniature device, she had disguised her original yellow rank cultivation as that of an ordinary person. Song Yongxiang still did not know what Milun Nation was planning this time, but now that he was back, there was no way they would be allowed to pull it off. Still, putting that aside, Zissou really was absurdly playful. She kept tugging at him all day, insisting that he look at how she would turn out once she grew up, which honestly left Song Yongxiang both helpless and amused. By then, Lianyi had also heard that Song Yongxiang was back, so at that moment, she was already standing out in the corridor, greeting him with a bright smile and welcoming him home. King Dai, the head maid, and Songlan had also come out with her. Still, their reactions were nowhere near as dramatic as Lianyi's. Almost the instant they met, the head maid had already begun, secretly probing Song Yongxiang's cultivation. She genuinely could not understand how he had gone from yellow rank all the way to earth rank in just a single year. At the same time, however, Song Yongxiang was also observing their cultivation in return, especially King Dai. In his memories, she had been around him for a very long time already. But what truly shocked him was that this headmaid actually possessed early-stage earth rank cultivation. Could it be that the old master had placed her by his side all along to protect him in secret? And after Song Yongxiang left, the old master also came out from third great uncle's place together with Uncle Song Mu. During that time, the old master formally ordered Song Mu to put Song Yongxiang's family head-level authority into effect. From now on, everyone in the Song family was to obey Song Yongxiang's command. More than that, he specifically ordered Aga and Ajin to be recalled, and instructed the Song residence's shadow guards to protect Song Yongxiang with everything they had from this day forward. Even Uncle Song Mu was stunned by that order. After all, not even the old master himself had ever received security on that level. But the old master clearly did not care. He was even planning to hand full command of the entire shadow guard unit over to Song Yongxiang as well, because in his eyes, that force would only bring out its greatest value in Song Yongxiang's hands. Meanwhile, back in the eastern courtyard, Song Yongxiang was still surrounded by maids bustling around him and attending to him on all sides, and the atmosphere there was strangely warm and harmonious. That kind of pampered young master life really did make him nostalgic. After all, there had once been a time when he too had lived as a carefree heir with nothing to worry about. Still, fun was fun, and fooling around was fooling around. The real business still needed to be arranged as soon as possible. Otherwise, they would be getting far too lax. Since Song Yongxiang had already discovered that Suin was a Milun Nation spy planted inside the estate, he instructed Zissou to keep an eye on Suin whenever she had the chance. But with one condition, above all else, she had to protect herself first. The second Song Yongxiang handed her the task. Zissou thumped her chest and agreed right away. She even swore she had already felt that something was off about Suin for a while now. Judging from the look on her face, though, she was probably just itching for a chance to get back at the girl. Still, that was not necessarily a bad thing. A clingy little troublemaker like Zissou, sharp and hard to shake off, was honestly perfect for this kind of tailing job. After that, Song Yongxiang dismissed the other maids and told them to get back to their own work, saying that he wanted to rest alone for a while. But the truth was, the real reason he sent them away was because he wanted to see what his mother had left behind for him. What kind of existence had that woman really been? The strange thing was that the box looked almost laughably ordinary. Its material was plain, unremarkable, nowhere near what you would expect from something supposedly hiding a major secret. And yet, that only made Song Yongxiang even more curious about what was inside. But the moment he tried to open it, he discovered that the box actually required a password. That instantly left him speechless. The old master had never mentioned that there would be another layer like this. Then again, after a closer look, the sealing array was not especially advanced. Since that was the case, he might as well just let the Star-Lord system crack it. While the system began unlocking the array, Song Yongxiang found his thoughts drifting back to what the old master had said earlier, especially that line his mother had left behind. Humanity cannot defy the laws of time. Time itself cannot be crossed, but the board can be reset, and beneath the star web, all things are pieces in the game. What exactly had she been trying to hint at? Just as Song Yongxiang was sinking deeper into thought, the system finally sent a notice that the lock had been broken. But what surprised him even more was that there were actually 12 valid password combinations. That only made him even more confused. Why would there be that many correct combinations? The more he thought about it, the more mysterious his mother became, and the number strings themselves looked weirdly familiar, as if he had seen them somewhere before. One of them was 133-00499. The moment he entered the code, the box opened on its own, but inside, there were only 3 items. One of them was a token, and Song Yongxiang recognized it almost instantly, because the words Star-Stepping Gate were engraved right across it. In his previous life, after joining the Black Armor Guard, he had heard those 3 words before. Supposedly, many of the Black Armor Guard's most secret and untold achievements were tied to that name, and yet inside the organization, it was practically treated like a forbidden phrase. No one dared bring it up openly. After a moment's thought, Song Yongxiang set that matter aside for the time being. As for the jade lock beside it, he had no idea what it was for yet, though the craftsmanship was undeniably exquisite. But the strangest object of all was the mask. The second Song Yongxiang picked it up. It activated on its own, and 4 glowing words surfaced across it. All beings, no fixed form. Was that its name? And on the back of the mask, there were 4 more words. Form follows the heart. What was that supposed to mean? Was this thing trying to talk to him in riddles now? Looking more closely, the mask seemed unfinished. The eye area and the nostrils had not even been carved open yet. But the truly bizarre part was that even without any openings, Song Yongxiang could still see everything outside the mask with perfect clarity. That was just absurd. Then, when he instinctively glanced toward the mirror, he finally realized something was very wrong. The mask on his face had vanished. No, not just that. The problem was much worse than that, because the reflection staring back at him was an aged version of himself. Song Yongxiang froze for a moment. Was this thing really capable of changing his appearance outright? The function of this mask was way too ridiculous. And of course, right at that exact moment, King Dai, the headmaid, suddenly pushed open the door and walked in, catching that entire scene head-on. That nearly scared her out of her wits. In the span of a moment, the young master had disappeared, and some strange middle-aged man had appeared in his room instead. Her first reaction was that a kidnapper had somehow broken into the estate. Seeing King Dai gripping a dagger and staring at him in full alert, Song Yongxiang suddenly had no idea how he was supposed to explain this mess. This damn mask was going to get him killed, so that was what had happened. Uncle Song Mu had come over with members of the Song family's shadow guards because he needed to discuss something important with Song Yongxiang. That was why King Dai, the headmaid, came upstairs afterward to report it to him. But the timing could not have been worse. King Dai had just happened to walk in at the exact moment Song Yongxiang put on that mask. And since it was the first time anyone had ever actually seen the aged version of Song Yongxiang with their own eyes, King Dai instantly drew her blade and demanded to know who he was. That left Song Yongxiang both helpless and speechless. Why were young people these days all so impulsive? Could nobody just talk things out anymore without jumping straight to knives? But before he could even finish thinking that, King Dai had already done more than just draw her weapon. She actually started chasing him down and attacking him. With things escalating that fast, Song Yongxiang had no choice but to make a move first and subdue her. Even then, King Dai's reaction was still way too intense. Despite already being pinned down, she still tried to shout that there was an assassin, clearly trying to alert everyone outside. That was something Song Yongxiang absolutely could not allow. If she really yelled, everyone outside would come rushing in at once. The problem was, the position the two of them ended up in looked far more compromising than it should have. But honestly, that could not be blamed on Song Yongxiang. King Dai was the one who attacked first. Right in the middle of all that chaos, Song Yongxiang remembered the line the mask had shown him earlier. Form follows the heart. Could it be that this thing could really reshape his appearance according to whatever image he held in his mind? And that was exactly how it worked. The moment Song Yongxiang casually imagined King Dai's appearance, he immediately transformed into her. That sight completely stunned King Dai. Even Song Yongxiang had to admit that the ability of this mask was absurdly outrageous, and only then did he finally understand why he had first appeared as an older version of himself. That elderly face was the truest image of himself buried deep in his own mind. But just as Song Yongxiang was still trying to process all this, Uncle Song-Moo's voice suddenly came from outside the door. So the commotion in the room had already been noticed after all. And to make things worse, the exact moment Song Yongxiang changed back into his normal appearance, Uncle Song-Moo pushed the door open and walked in with 2 others behind him. At that point, the whole situation became impossible to explain cleanly, and the white-haired kid behind Song-Moo took one look at the scene, gave Song Yongxiang a big thumbs up, and declared with total admiration that he was truly a role model for their generation. Even in a scene that awkward, Uncle Song-Moo still looked calm as ever and kept reminding Song Yongxiang, without the slightest sign of fatigue, that his fiancée Kong Jingxin would be attending the family banquet that night. Hearing that again almost gave Song Yongxiang a headache. Song-Moo had repeated that line so many times today that he was sick of hearing it. Ignoring that nonsense, Song Yongxiang turned back toward King Dai, intending to say a few words to calm her down. But only then did he notice that her expression looked oddly off, almost as if she had genuinely been wronged. So, in the end, Song Yongxiang told King Dai to go handle something else first, giving her space to step away and collect herself. After she was sent off, the rest of them headed to the study and finally prepared to talk business. But before anything else, Song Yongxiang first asked Uncle Song-Moo to tell him the truth. Had King Dai really been placed by the old master at his side? Song-Moo did not hide anything and told him the full truth. King Dai had originally been an Earth rank expert from Shadow Guard Team 3 of the Song residence, and she had stayed by Song Yongxiang's side all these years for one reason only, to protect him in secret. Hearing that, many things that had never made sense before suddenly clicked into place. No wonder, when he was forced to flee Yong'an City in his previous life, there had been a group of people who appeared out of nowhere and fought to the death to escort him out. After that, Uncle Song-Moo formally began introducing the structure of the Song residence's shadow guards to Song Yongxiang. Team 1 handled operations, Team 2 handled intelligence, and Team 3 handled protection. Each had its own duties, and none directly commanded the others. But just moments ago, the old Marquis had personally ordered that Song Yongxiang now stand above them all as their single master. That was exactly why Song-Moo had brought Ajin and Aga over now, so Song Yongxiang could properly meet them face to face. Still, hearing those names made Song Yongxiang want to laugh a little. Ajin and Aga. Those names really did sound absurdly casual. Even so, both men showed full respect toward this newly dropped-in superior. The black-haired man was Gao Gaiga, leader of Team 1. The white-haired kid at his side was Ma Jinhua, leader of Team 2. As for Song-Moo himself, he was naturally the head of Team 3. When Song Yongxiang brought up their names, Song-Moo reminded him that both of those names had actually been given by his mother. Back then, the two of them had been nameless orphans with nothing at all. By now, they could more or less be considered half-raised sons of hers. When the topic turned to his own name, Gao Gaiga explained that he had once heard Song Yongxiang's mother say it himself. The name came from a hero of some ultra-ancient civilization. Ma Jinhua's name came from the same source as well, except in his case, it belonged to a demon god from ancient legend. Both of them had once been nameless children, barely surviving day by day. If they had not run into Song Yongxiang's mother back then, they probably would have starved to death in the slums outside Linian City. But hearing all that only made Song Yongxiang's doubts deepen. Whether it was a hero or a demon god, every thread led back to the ultra-ancient civilization, and every thread pointed straight toward his mysterious mother. So why was it that in all his memories, he could not recall the slightest trace of her? Who exactly had she been? In his previous life, Song Yongxiang had barely remembered anything at all about his parents. He only vaguely recalled that the old master had once said they disappeared 16 years ago, while the outside world had been told they died in an accident. At the time, Song Yongxiang had only just turned 2, so it made sense that no clear memories remained. Back then, he had been young and reckless, and he had never really cared. Afterward came years of wandering, hardship, and constant struggle just to survive, leaving him with no energy to dig into the matter. And after decades of life and death battles, time had long since buried his parents deep in the back of his mind. But things were different now. Song Yongxiang was sure that Song-Moo knew at least part of the truth. Given Song Yongxiang's current position, if he asked directly, Song-Moo should logically answer. And yet, looking at Song-Moo's face now, Song Yongxiang sensed a hesitation that was hard to ignore. It was the kind of expression that clearly said there was something he could not bring himself to speak about. And when Song Yongxiang thought carefully about his previous life, he realized that everyone had always been strangely evasive whenever his parents came up. Could it be that there was more to this matter than he had ever realized? In the end, Song Yongxiang swallowed the question. Since Song-Moo did not want to speak, there was no point forcing it out of him. After all, there was no need to make things hard for a loyal retainer who had followed the Song family for so many years. Still, Song Yongxiang told Song Mu to arrange a flying vessel for him at once. Since he had finally come home, he wanted to make a trip to the Song family cemetery and pay respects to his parents first. Once that round of conversation came to an end, the group returned together to the living hall. But the moment they got there, a thought suddenly crossed Song Yongxiang's mind. Since he was now the commander of the Song residence's shadow guards, then by all logic, did that mean King Dai was under his direct command as well? The second he said it, Song Mu's face showed clear reluctance. Still, after a pause, he admitted that Song Yongxiang did indeed have that authority, then called King Dai over to receive orders. King Dai, on the other hand, showed no objection at all. She stepped forward and immediately reported her position within the shadow guards in a neat and formal manner. Looking at her, Song Yongxiang could not help feeling a little emotional. For all these years, she had stayed by his side, quietly protecting him from the shadows. That could not have been easy. So this time, Song Yongxiang decided to give her a gift as a reward. But when King Dai actually took the pill into her hands, she was clearly still too stunned to react. Judging by her expression, she had probably never received something that valuable in her entire life. It was not just King Dai. The three people standing behind her were equally stunned. A single level 5 pill usually sold for over $1 million. So even Uncle Song Mu had never imagined that Song Yongxiang would be this generous the moment he made a move. And this level 5 Earth Spirit pill was no ordinary treasure. It could raise an Earth rank cultivator by 1 minor realm with absolutely no side effects. Though the effect only worked once. The second Ajin and Aga heard that, their eyes lit up on the spot. Everything else could wait, but a pill that directly raised a realm was the kind of thing they could not help envying. Even King Dai could barely believe it after hearing the explanation. A pill with that level of quality and effect would probably count as a priceless treasure even in Tiandu Nation's royal family. In the end, they had all underestimated Song Yongxiang. To him, a mere level 5 pill was nothing. He had enough of them to sell off in batches, and now that he needed people, it was only natural to start raising the strength of those he truly trusted. So Song Yongxiang casually told Ajin and Aga that as long as they performed well from now on, pills of this level were something he had plenty of. Hearing that, the two of them nearly exploded with excitement and immediately started swearing loyalty on the spot. From now on, wherever Song Yongxiang's sword pointed, they would carve through everything until nothing was left standing. In that case, there just happened to be a task ready for them right now. There was someone Song Yongxiang wanted investigated, and this was also a perfect chance to test exactly how capable Shadow Guard Team 2 really was. The moment the order was given, Shadow Guard Team 2 moved out in full force, and Ajin in particular was obviously fired up, determined to complete this mission beautifully. At the same time, Song Yongxiang and Uncle Song Mu also set out together for the Song family cemetery to pay respects to his parents. On the flying vessel, Xia Bijie could not help asking why Ma-san, a cripple, insisted on coming along to the memorial as well. In response, Ma-san only shot back with a question of his own. Had he really not noticed that the young master who came back this time was completely different from before? At that very moment, Song Yongxiang sat in the rear of the vessel talking non-stop about rare medicinal ingredients and trade arrangements. He was nothing like the useless playboy heir he used to be. Even shopkeeper Hong on the other end of the call was left stunned by the questions Song Yongxiang threw at him. There were several herbs among them that even he had never heard of. Fortunately, shopkeeper Hong was currently at the Hong Merchant Guild's Nanzhou headquarters, so he said he could consult the experts there right away. The moment he hung up the call, shopkeeper Hong headed straight into the core zone of the Nanzhou headquarters. Waiting there for him was Hong Yuxiao, the direct heir of the Hong Merchant Guild. At present, the Hong family had assigned her to take full charge of all business in Nanzhou. After reading through Song Yongxiang's information, Hong Yuxiao immediately told shopkeeper Hong to arrange her schedule for the coming days. She had suddenly decided that she very much needed to meet this young marquis of the Song family in person. Meanwhile, at the Song family cemetery, just as Song Yongxiang was about to pay respects to his parents who had died in the prime of their lives, an airborne hoverbike appeared at the outer perimeter of the assassin organization Taiyuan's headquarters at the exact same time. The one piloting that craft was none other than A-Sen, the woman Song Yongxiang had loved in his previous life. After completing the coded verification with the headquarters, she finally obtained clearance to land, and once permission was granted, A-Sen did not hesitate for even a second. She drove both herself and the bike straight through the waterfall being used as camouflage. If she had made even the slightest mistake, she would have been smashed to pieces on the spot. And because she came in so fast, the hoverbike continued skidding along the track for quite a long distance even after landing. But danger on this level meant almost nothing to A-Sen. Right now, she was still wrapped up in the simple joy of finally making it back to Taiyuan headquarters. At only 18 years old, A-Sen was already the host of the Star Soul General Lu Bu. Since she spent most of her time carrying out missions away from home, she rarely got the chance to return to Taiyuan headquarters and rest. It was probably because she had not seen senior sister Asan in far too long. But the junior disciple named Sinan burst into tears the instant she saw her, and because she was crying so hard, Asan immediately realized that something was seriously wrong, and that was exactly the truth. Sinan was originally supposed to travel to Bijou with their master, but the two of them were ambushed on the way by forces from Milan Nation. Worse still, because their master was desperate to save her disciple, she ended up suffering grave injuries herself. The second she heard that, Asan's face changed. She immediately told her junior sister to lead the way, so she could check on their master at once. Meanwhile, inside the infirmary, the atmosphere had already turned unbearably heavy. The physicians at Taiyuan headquarters had just announced that their 12th attempt at formulating a treatment had failed, and just as they were preparing to begin the 13th attempt, Asan rushed into the room with Sinan. The moment she saw her master lying weakly in bed, Asan was shaken to the core. She could not even imagine what kind of vicious method those Milan bastards had used on her master. The woman on the bed was named Suonyang. She was currently 37 years old and had early-stage heaven-rank cultivation. If she had not risked herself to save Sinan, she never would have ended up in such a tragic state. At that moment, mysterious toxin marks had already spread all across her arm. If they could not produce the proper antidote soon, she would likely die before long. What made this poison truly terrifying was that it continuously eroded the victim's secondary star soul veins, while being extremely difficult to purge from the body. Hearing that, Asan asked in disbelief whether even Taiyuan's technology could not formulate the right antidote. The physician's answer was brutally direct. He told her that they had already tried 12 times. At the moment, the only thing they could do was use filtration methods to barely stop the poison from spreading into the brain. But judging from the current state of things, they likely did not have enough time left to keep experimenting. And on top of that, the structure of the poison itself was abnormally strange. It was not a simple chemical toxin. Instead, it fused chemical compounds with soul power in an extremely intricate way, creating stable toxin units. Judging from that structure alone, the method looked strikingly similar to the techniques of alchemists. After hearing that explanation, Asan understood right away. At this point, only a truly top-tier alchemist might still be able to save her master. But time was running out, and she had no idea where she was supposed to find someone like that on such short notice. The physician could see the desperation on her face, and he could only add helplessly that with the current level of alchemy on the Eastern continent, it was basically impossible for someone good enough to appear. In other words, there was probably no real way out of this anymore. But at that exact moment, Asan suddenly remembered someone. When she left Yuanding City, that person seemed to have given her several pills. The instant the memory surfaced, she immediately pulled out the storage card. The next second, she dumped the pills inside straight onto the bedside. That single move stunned both physicians on the spot, because among those pills were not only revitalization pills, but also ones that boosted cultivation efficiency, others that enhanced combat strength, and several more besides. Every single one was frighteningly high in both value and quality. And somewhere among that pile, there really did seem to be a bottle with obvious detoxifying properties. The physician's expression changed at once. He immediately ordered someone to analyze the ingredients, because there was now a real possibility that one of those pills could save Suonyang's life. When Sinan saw Asan suddenly throw out that many precious pills, she was so shocked that she blurted out a question on the spot, asking whether senior sister had just robbed the Hong Clan Grand Apothecary. That instantly made Asan awkward beyond words, because the truth was that every single one of those pills had been given to her by a mysterious man. After a round of scientific analysis, the doctors finally confirmed that the white pill really did have detoxifying effects, and as if everything had been arranged in advance, there were exactly 3 doses inside, just enough to completely solve the problem in Suonyang's body. As an assassin, Asan would never believe that something like this was merely coincidence. Deep down, she had already started asking herself over and over again just what kind of man Song Yangxiang really was. Meanwhile, inside the audience corridor at Taiyuan headquarters, the High Priestess happened to be reviewing Song Yangxiang's file as well. While doing so, she casually asked about Suonyang's current condition, since Taiyuan had no intention of losing a heaven-rank powerhouse for nothing. But the answer she received made her pause. After taking pills provided by target S691, Suonyang had already been pulled back from the brink. That result brought a rare flicker of surprise to the High Priestess's face. And according to the file, this man possessed the ability to copy origin Star Soul generals. But that kind of method was supposed to belong solely to that person. She could not understand why it had somehow appeared in the outside world. The only explanation she could come up with was that that person had most likely taken over the body described in the file. But that made even less sense, because she had clearly prepared a far better vessel long ago. Could it be that the doctor who once founded the assassin organization Taiyuan had truly returned? Elsewhere, Song Yongxiang was still standing in the Song family cemetery, paying respects to his mysterious missing parents. Just as he had expected, the scan results showed that their actual remains were not there at all, which meant this gravesite was most likely nothing more than a decoy arranged by the old master all those years ago. Still, judging from the mask called All Beings, no fixed form, his parents were clearly anything but ordinary. So what kind of secret had they vanished with back then? Once the memorial was over, a Jin immediately reported that he had already uncovered information on the man named Sun Xia. He was 19 years old, came from the slums, had once been imprisoned for tomb raiding, and had now built up a gang called the White Dragon Gang, mainly making money by fencing goods for grave robbers. At present, that group was holed up inside an abandoned residence at number 13, Dagu Alley, in the northern part of the city, and Shadow Guard Team 2 already had the place under full surveillance. After hearing that, Song Yongxiang made up his mind on the spot to go there personally. He had to find out how Sun Xia, in the previous life, managed to seize the Chao Ren inheritance that should have belonged to the Song family. Meanwhile, back at the landing platform, Old Ma and Old Xia were actually discussing Song Yongxiang's fiancé, Kong Xingxin. Old Ma believed that with Song Yongxiang's current status and ability, there was no need at all for him to keep enduring in silence for the sake of the Song family and marry a woman like Kong Xingxin. Old Xia, however, felt that the old Marquis probably would not go so far as to break faith like that. But before the two of them could argue it out, Song Yongxiang and the others had already returned to the landing platform. After that, the whole group headed straight for the northern part of the city under Song Yongxiang's orders. By the time evening was drawing near, a small-time thug finally showed up at the entrance of the abandoned house they had been secretly monitoring. Judging from the huge bag he was carrying, this trip had obviously brought him quite a haul. The only problem was that the man spoke in such a thick countryside accent that even the eavesdropping became harder than expected. Still, from the things he laid out on the ground, it was clear they had probably been dug out of the tomb of some wealthy family. On the surface, they looked ordinary, but mixed in among them were clearly some items of real value. But logically speaking, a 19-year-old slum kid like Sun Xia should not know the first thing about antique treasures. So how was he suddenly able to judge this kind of stuff? Sure enough, Song Yongxiang soon saw Sun Xia grab the ring hanging from his chest and lower his head in thought for a moment. The next second, the ring began to glow with a faint purple light. Right after that, Sun Xia deliberately put on an arrogant, superior air and started choosing the items he wanted. On top of that, he acted like some seasoned old fox, ordering the lackeys in front of him to split profits with the grave robbers on a 30-70 ratio, and even making the other side cover transport costs. Now that the sales channel was in his hands, he naturally wanted the biggest slice for himself. If they did not like it, they could walk away. The moment Sun Xia's words fell, that lackey immediately ran out to renegotiate with the grave robbers. Judging from the way things looked, their fencing business was doing pretty damn well these days. As for everything that had just happened, Song Yongxiang and A Jin had been watching the entire thing from the rooftop of the neighboring building. And as the leader of Shadow Guard Team 2, A Jin still could not stop marveling at Song Yongxiang's invisibility array. It could distort light, block sound, and even suppress soul power fluctuations. For stealth and assassination, it was practically a perfect tool. To squeeze out more useful information, Song Yongxiang took Ajin and moved even closer to the courtyard where Sun Xia was staying. With the invisibility array covering them, they had only just landed soundlessly on the rooftop when they heard Sun Xia speaking in a low voice to the presence inside the ring. From the contents of their conversation, it was obvious that if not for the ring guiding and backing him from the shadows, Sun Xia would never have become the leader of the White Dragon Gang. The being inside the ring even stated clearly that it could already sense the life flame of Song Yongxiang's third great uncle nearing its final extinguishing. As long as the two of them kept working together, then in the future, the one who would become the host of the Star Soul General Cao Ren would definitely be them. At the same time, Song Yongxiang noticed something else. This Sun Xia standing before him felt completely different from the soul entity he had encountered in his previous life, and yet, from the ring on Sun Xia's hand came a soul power fluctuation that felt strangely familiar. Only after calming down and thinking it through did Song Yongxiang finally realize the truth. The soul power coming from that ring was the one that truly belonged to the person he had known in his previous life. Meanwhile, back at the Mecha Martial Academy, Master Nenguo was also leading his men in rushing out a batch of newly designed Wei Yuan mechs. On the surface, this order had been personally assigned by Principal Gu of the Academy, but in practice, it had already been elevated to the level of a top priority military matter. Master Nan even pounded his chest and guaranteed that as long as the materials kept coming in, he would absolutely finish the order on time. On top of that, he had even prepared a special surprise for Song Yongxiang, clearly hoping to use it as a chance to formally become his disciple. But in Song Yongxiang's eyes, this so-called new design was really just a rough mashup of all the previous blueprints he had given out earlier. It looked flashy enough on the surface, sure, but the whole structure was far too bloated. Anyone with a trained eye could tell instantly that the soul power consumption on that thing would be massive. Still, seeing how passionate Master Nan was, Song Yongxiang chose not to tear the idea apart on the spot. Fortunately, Master Tang's family could provide the crucial ore and metal supplies needed for this round of mech production. Otherwise, this whole deal might never have come together in the first place. In truth, Master Tang also needed a major order on the Shen family side to stabilize his own standing there. So this time, he was putting everything he had into it, dead set on making sure this deal went through. At the same time, while Song Yongxiang was keeping watch on Xunxia in the northern part of the city, he received word that his fiancée, Kong Xingxin, was also heading toward the north side. Based on the intelligence gathered by Shadow Guard Team 2, Kong Xingxin had probably been secretly involved with Xunxia for quite some time already. The only reason this had never been reported back to the family was because they wanted to avoid enraging Song Yongxiang and keep the Song family's internal peace from falling apart on the surface. In a way, this only confirmed what had happened in Song Yongxiang's previous life, when Kong Xingxin ultimately abandoned him. But now that he knew in advance, the situation was completely different. One way or another, that woman was going to pay a price for this. Even so, what interested Song Yongxiang more than Kong Xingxin was still the ring in Sun Xia's hand. In his previous life, who exactly had been the one that rose by borrowing Shin Xia's body? Song Yongxiang glanced at the sky and judged that it was about time for him to head back to the estate. It looked like this trip home was guaranteed to come with a full show. Still, with one mystery after another piling up, the whole thing was exhausting. Before leaving, Song Yongxiang still handed Ujin and the others in Shadow Guard Team 2 quite a few Shadow Stealth talismans. When it came to Kong Xingxin, he needed hard evidence in hand before he could truly break the situation open. That part for now would be left to Ujin and his people. Meanwhile, over at the landing platform in the outer courtyard of the Song residence, guests had already begun arriving one after another. The first ones to show up were the younger members of his second uncle Song Bo's line, Song Yunduan and Song Yunshu. And yet the two of them were actually guessing that the reason Song Yunxiang came home this time was probably because he had run out of money outside. Clearly, that whole branch of the family did not follow the news at all, and the very last person to step off the flying vessel turned out to be Song Yongxiang's eldest sister, Song Yunjin, the very commander of the Scarlet Luan army from earlier. On that fact alone, tonight's family banquet was already guaranteed to be anything but peaceful. Before night fully fell, Song Yongxiang also returned to the Song residence, bathed, changed clothes, and prepared himself for the family banquet that awaited him. As the saying went, 30 years east of the river, 30 years west. Tonight, Song Yongxiang intended to take back piece by piece everything he had once lost. Meanwhile, inside the banquet hall of the outer courtyard, several highly important figures had already taken their seats. Among the older generation, the eldest uncle of the Song family was unable to attend because military affairs kept him tied down. So his wife, Madam, He, had come in his place. Alongside her were Song Yongxiang's eldest sister, Song Yunjin, and his cousin, Song Yunchu. The old marquis did not blame his eldest son too much for failing to show up. What he could not understand was why his second son, Song Bo, was also absent tonight. When the old marquis asked the question, Madam Cheng, Song Yongxiang's second aunt, immediately rose to explain that Song Bo had a social engagement tonight that he could not get out of, so she had come in his place. That excuse instantly angered the old marquis. In his eyes, no social engagement had any right to be placed on the same level as a family banquet. At that point, concubine Zhao, one of Song Bo's concubines, quickly stepped out to speak for him when she saw the old marquis getting angry, saying that the person meeting Song Bo tonight was an envoy sent by the Zhang family of Zhangzhou to discuss a major business deal. And that deal, apparently, was also tied to the internal struggle over the Zhang family's succession. The other side was even willing to pay a staggering price in exchange for Song family cooperation. Even so, Song Bo had reportedly said he would wrap things up as quickly as possible and hurry back. Fortunately, just when the atmosphere was beginning to turn ugly, Song Yongxiang happened to walk into the banquet hall, which finally brought the brewing drama to a halt. Otherwise, no one could say how much further the old marquis might have taken it. The moment concubine Zhou saw Song Yongxiang arrive, she lit up with enthusiasm and even invited him to come sit by her side. According to Song Yongxiang's memories, concubine Zhou was also one of Song Bo's concubines. From the time he was little, she had always treated him well, and that kindness had been genuine. It probably had something to do with the fact that she had once worked as a maid in the eastern courtyard. But just as Song Yongxiang was about to head over and take a seat, the old marquis suddenly called out in front of everyone and told him to sit at his side instead. That instantly made the atmosphere delicate. After all, that seat was supposed to belong exclusively to Song Bo. If Song Yongxiang really sat there now, then second aunt's side probably would not take it lightly. Just as Song Yongxiang was about to sit down again, concubine Zhao suddenly asked him with obvious curiosity whether he was carrying something valuable. because she thought she had caught the scent of a pill above the 3-star level on him. As expected of someone from a medical family, she used to be nothing more than second uncle's secretary, but now she was already helping manage the Song family's medicine-related business with some basic knowledge of pills. Before Song Yongxiang could sit, Madam Cheng suddenly spoke in a cold tone and told him to sit without worry. Song Bo would not be coming tonight because he had a dinner engagement. This second uncle of his was in charge of all the Song family's worldly business, and he was a practical man who valued results and profit above all else. He had always looked down on the old Song Yongxiang, who never tried to improve himself, so it was not surprising that he did not come tonight. Madam Cheng was the same kind of business-minded person. Still, both husband and wife had their own principles. No matter what, they always put the Song family's interests and reputation first. At that moment, Madam He also explained that first Uncle Song King was still holding the line with the Iron Wall army and truly could not get away. So she hoped Song Yongxiang, as his nephew, could understand. In Song Yongxiang's memory, first Uncle Song Qing had always been a stubborn and upright career soldier, so naturally he looked down on the way Song Yongxiang used to behave as a playboy. Madam, he was much the same. After all, she came from the He family of Marquis Whiting, a line that had also given everything in loyalty to Tiandu Nation. It looked like aside from the women present, no one from the older generation would be coming tonight. In the end, that could only be blamed on how badly Song Yongxiang himself used to behave. After that slightly awkward exchange ended, his cousin Song Yunqi also walked in. He had already reached early stage Earth rank at 16, and that had given him a habit of looking down on everyone. Seeing her son dressed and acting like that, Madam, he could only look helpless. Song Yongxiang even found himself thinking that this really was the classic case of a spoiled child raised with too much indulgence. Still, faced with such a gifted grandson, the old Marquis could not really say too much. He simply waved a hand and told him to take his seat. But the moment Song Yunqi saw Song Yongxiang, a mocking expression appeared on his face, and he even called him Xiangzi. This brat really had no sense of respect. Calling his older brother that way was basically asking to be dealt with. Still, in Song Yongxiang's memory, although Song Yunqi had also been this arrogant in his previous life, deep down he had still been a good kid with a sincere heart. In the end, he had stayed behind with a few boys from the preparatory academy to cover the retreat of Yong'an City's civilians, fighting until his death. But tonight, Song Yongxiang was the main character. No matter what, he had to teach this little cousin a lesson first. In the blink of an eye, Song Yongxiang's soul power began to spread through the banquet hall. Since everyone present had cultivation, he was not worried about causing any trouble. Once they sensed that Earth rank aura from him, everyone showed clear surprise. Only concubine Zhou reacted differently. She looked at Song Yongxiang with obvious relief and pride, almost like a mother watching her son finally grow up. But Song Yunqi still refused to accept it. After all, he was also at early stage Earth rank, and he was 2 years younger than Song Yongxiang. So he still clung to the title of the Song family's #1 genius and refused to call Song Yongxiang big brother. In that case, there was no helping it. Since the brat was forcing him to show off, then Song Yongxiang had no choice but to take the pill. After swallowing an Earth Spirit pill, Song Yongxiang gave them all a live demonstration of what it meant to break from early stage Earth rank to mid-stage Earth rank. The burst of soul power spread through the entire room like a fountain exploding upward. Now they should have nothing left to say. Did they really still think he was the same useless playboy from before? At this point, the title of Song Family Genius suited him much better. The one who had been the Song family's #1 genius 1 second ago nearly turned into Song Yongxiang's biggest admirer the next. This kid really was shamelessly quick to switch sides. After learning that Song Yongxiang had pills that could help someone break through, he even said he was willing to call him grandpa in exchange for that chance. Calling him brother would work, and Song Yongxiang could accept that. But if he really wanted to call him grandpa, then that would depend on whether the old Marquis could tolerate it. After seeing him act like that, everyone present felt so awkward that the whole atmosphere instantly turned painfully stiff. At that moment, concubine Zhao, who came from a family skilled in pillcraft, could not help asking Song Yongxiang whether that was the legendary 5-star Earth Spirit pill. The moment she said that, both Madam Cheng and Madam He were stunned. Even Tiandu Nation's royal family could not casually bring out many treasures of that level. The 5-star pill on Madam He's side of the family had been passed down through Marquis Whiting's household for more than 400 years. Madam Cheng had also recently heard that the Hong Merchant Guild had made a huge profit a few days ago by auctioning off a batch of 3-star pills after gaining the favor of some great alchemy master. If a bottle like this ended up in her and her husband's hands, then the Song family's businesses would surely prosper even more this year. What troubled her most now was how she was supposed to ask her nephew Song Yongxiang for it. At the same time, the old Marquis was also thinking that if this Earth Spirit pill were given to the backbone members of the family, then the Song family's middle-tier strength would rise by another level. Although he had already seen Song Yongxiang's pill refining ability earlier that morning at Third Uncle's place, he was still shocked all over again at this moment. Madam, he had not joined the conversation, but she also knew exactly how valuable this pill was. Normally, a single one would already be enough to become the treasured heirloom of some first-rate families. First Uncle Song Ching naturally had no need for such a pill, but for the sake of Yunjin and Yunki, lowering her pride a little as their mother was hardly a big deal. But at this exact moment, her pride got in the way again. Over the years, First Uncle's branch had no grudge or misunderstanding with Song Yongxiang, but if she acted too warmly now, she feared people would laugh at her for being opportunistic. Yet if she stayed too cold, she feared she would never get the chance to ask. While she was still hesitating, Madam Ching had already struck first and directly pulled Song Yongxiang down into the seat beside her. Seeing Madam Ching go that far, Madam He immediately told Song Yunki to pour tea for his older brother Song Yongxiang and apologize. The moment those words fell, the old Marquis, who had somehow become the least noticeable person at the table, suddenly realized that his tea set had vanished. In the blink of an eye, that tea set, together with Song Yunchu, had already appeared beside Song Yongxiang's seat. Good heavens, this kid really had no fear of death. Sure enough, this made the old Marquis's face turn red with anger. If not for Yunki's decent aptitude, he probably would have ended up as the main course on tonight's table. Still, under the current circumstances, Song Yongxiang intended to give him that chance, but it would depend on his recent performance. Besides, the kid really was talented. Helping him push toward heaven rank next time was not impossible. Not long after that little farce ended, Song Yongxiu and Song Yunrui also arrived together. Sharp-eyed as ever, Song Yongxiu immediately noticed that something was wrong with the seating arrangement. In her memory, why would that little good-for-nothing be sitting in her father's seat? Although the old Marquis had always been heavily biased towards Song Yongxiang, her mother had never bought into it. Yet now, looking at her mother's attitude, it could already be considered somewhat flattering. While Song Yongxiu was still thinking, that blockhead Song Yunrui suddenly jumped out and told Song Yongxiang to get off his father's seat. Good thing Song Yongxiu covered that idiot's mouth the very next second. Otherwise, before dinner even started, Song Yongxiang might have ended up breaking through to heaven rank out of sheer rage. Those two cousins really were the perfect contrast. One knew how to read the room and when to back off, while the other was a complete fool who loved acting like a bootlicker. He had also been at odds with Song Yongxiang for a long time because of Kong Xingxin. Maybe fools really did have lucky lives, because in Song Yongxiang's previous life, Song Yunrui had actually been one of the only two survivors of the Song family. Back when Song Yongxiang was wandering in exile through Shishui Nation, he ran into him again. At the time, Song Yunrui seemed to be hunting down some so-called Song family bastard, insisting that if not for that bastard, the Song family would never have been wiped out in the Beast Tide. After that, Song Yongxiang never saw him again. They met by chance, then parted again just as quickly. Even now, Song Yongxiang still did not know who that bastard Song Yunrui had been talking about really was. Could this somehow also be tied to the coming Beast Tide? If that were true, then it would mean a traitor had already appeared among the Song family's direct bloodline. Right after that, the eldest sister of the Song family's third generation, Song Yunjin, also walked in. If she had not seen the report from the Scarlet Luan army with her own eyes, she never would have believed that Song Yongxiang had really managed to lead them out alive in front of a god-ranked beast. His eldest sister truly was capable. She had built up an entire Scarlet Luan army made up solely of female officers. Still, she seemed to be constantly troubled by military funding, which left her looking tense and troubled all the time. Even so, Song Yongxiang really did owe her thanks this time for sending the warship to pick him up. Without that, he never would have made it home so smoothly. The old Marquis obviously knew that Song Yunjin had been short on funds lately, so he deliberately said that all expenses from this trip would be reimbursed by the family. And right then, Song Yongxiu's greedy streak flared up again. She muttered under her breath that their eldest sister had probably only come back for dinner so grandfather would reimburse her expenses. And those words instantly darkened Song Yunjin's face. But that was also a form of testing. Song Yunjin had always despised the old playboy Song Yongxiang used to be. So if she could still remain this polite now, that only meant this younger cousin had truly grown into something impressive. To make things easier for everyone, Song Yongxiang directly told the old master that he would cover his eldest sister's expenses himself, since the whole trip had happened because she came to bring him home. The moment he said that, the old master instantly turned into a sly old fox, and smoothly replied that since Song Yongxiang had made several fortunes lately, a mere few million surely meant nothing to him. Seriously. Song Yongxiang might now be poor in everything except pills and money, but the old master had thrown that burden onto him with ridiculous skill. At the same time, fourth uncle from the southern courtyard and the old Marquis's adopted daughter, Song Shi, also arrived at the banquet hall. The moment this fourth uncle saw Song Yongxiang back, he immediately became excited. He even said that tonight he would treat everyone and drag old Ma out for a couple of drinks. Song Yongxiang had only just built up his new image, so there was no way he was letting it collapse like that. He really needed people to stop inviting him to that kind of thing from now on. At tonight's Song family banquet, aside from first uncle and second uncle, basically all of the Song family's third generation and household members had already arrived. This fourth uncle, Song King, was the old master's youngest son. Rumor had it that he was born to the old master's second wife. In terms of cultivation, he ranked at the bottom among the brothers, and his status in the Song family had even been worse than Song Yongxiang's in his previous life. Little Aunt Song Shi was the old master's adopted daughter. In his previous life, Song Yongxiang had never really cared about where she came from. She was not yet 30, already at early-stage Earth rank, and recently seemed to have risen into management within the preparatory academy. If none of the people present were the problem, then could the traitor Song Yunrui once mentioned have been someone else entirely? Song Yongxiang just did not know whether Song Yunrui already knew who that so-called bastard really was. Maybe he should find a chance to test him. But just as Song Yongxiang was about to speak, a little girl suddenly threw herself into his arms and pouted that, when he wasn't there, nobody took her out for good food. This little girl was Song Yunhua, the daughter of second uncle and concubine Zhou. Among all the Song siblings and cousins, she was one of the people closest to Song Yongxiang. At the same time, Song Yunzhao, the daughter of second uncle and concubine Zhao, also appeared behind him. It was said that back then, concubine Zhao had risen from being second uncle's secretary to becoming his concubine largely because of this daughter. But the girl herself was quiet and reserved, exactly the kind of person Song Yongxiang was worst at dealing with. When Song Yongxiang asked Yuanhua whether she wanted to sit together, she answered in a strange, teasing tone that every person who sat in that seat ended up getting ruthlessly fleeced by grandfather. Song Yongxiang was instantly speechless. If this girl had shown up earlier, he might have escaped this disaster. Forget it. He would just treat it as spending money to ward off trouble. Once everyone had taken their seats, the old master told the stewards to fill all the cups, and tonight's family banquet was finally about to begin. The second Yuki heard that wine was being poured. He immediately raised his hand and volunteered to serve Song Yongxiang. This kid was really willing to go all out for the sake of those pills. That sudden change left the people who had just arrived completely stunned. Song Yongki was usually proud and aloof, so seeing him suddenly act like this was genuinely bizarre. At the same time, Uncle Song Mu reminded the old marquis that the Kong family from Yong'an City had not arrived yet, so pouring the wine now might be a little early. The old marquis was probably just too happy today. Judging from his expression, he seemed to have completely forgotten about it. Still, the Kong family was at least the ruling family of a city and part of the court system, so they had to be given some face. The old marquis therefore told everyone to wait a little longer. The moment he heard that the Kong family was coming, Song Yanrui immediately perked up. Even now, he still treated Kong Jingshen like some kind of goddess. Seeing that, Song Yangshu immediately told him to behave himself. No matter what, Kong Jingshen still had a marriage contract with Song Yongxiang, so she was not someone he should be talking about so casually. But that idiot shamelessly replied that Kong Jingshen did not even like Song Yansheng, and that once he broke through to Earth rank, he would ask the old master to switch the engagement over to him instead. Song Yangshu genuinely could not understand why her brother liked Kong Jingshen so much. She had long since seen that woman for exactly what she was, but Song Yunrui only shot her a look and told her to go think about it herself. The scenery there really was wide open and flat enough that instantly pushed Song Yongxiu over the edge. She rolled up her sleeves and looked ready to beat Song Yunrui on the spot. Seeing that the situation had turned bad, Song Yunrui immediately grabbed Steward Song Shui and claimed he was going to the front gate to receive City Lord Kong, clearly using it as an excuse to run. Not long after he left, King Dai came to report to Song Yongxiang and the old marquis that team leader Ma had returned and wanted to deliver some news in person. He was already waiting in the side hall. When Song Yongxiang and the old marquis arrived at the side hall, Ma Jinhua immediately handed over the photos he had just taken. After Song Yongxiang left the northern part of the city, that scheming Kong Jingshen had actually brought both her father and grandfather to examine Shinxia in person, and the behavior between the two of them had been extremely suggestive. On top of that, the Song family's planted source inside the Kong family had learned that old Master Kong, fresh off his heaven rank breakthrough, was already planning to bring Zujia in as a live-in son-in-law. He even intended to publicly break the engagement with Song Yongxiang during tonight's family banquet. That old man had gone so far as to declare that he wanted to measure strength with the Song family. After seeing the photos and hearing the recording, everyone present was left speechless. A man who had only just broken through to heaven rank actually dared to talk like that. Did he really think the Song family was made of paper? The old marquis then asked Song Yongxiang for his opinion. If Song Yunxiang insisted on keeping the marriage contract, the Song family did not mind revealing a few hidden cards to put on a show. But in Song Yunxiang's view, none of that was necessary. He had never cared much for this marriage contract in the first place. So ending it directly was the easiest answer. And there was no need to expose the Song family's hidden cards either. If new ones were needed, he could simply make a few himself. As for who those new cards would be, he had already decided. Ajin, Aga, and King Dai. The three people in this very room. Right now, he intended to push all three of them into heaven rank and then send them under his orders to test just how hard Old Master Kong's wrists really were. And while Song Yunxiang was helping Ajin, Aga, and King Dai raise their cultivation, Song Yunqi was outside the side hall, pressing himself against the door and trying to eavesdrop. But Song Yunxiang had already set up a high-level isolation array in the room, so he was certain Song Yunqi could not hear a thing. Seeing him act like that, Song Yunjin immediately grabbed his ear and told him to stop embarrassing himself. But right at that moment, two heaven-rank breakthrough surges of soul power burst out from inside the side hall. Everyone in the main hall felt it clearly. The two siblings at the doorway felt it most directly, especially since they had also been present when first uncle made his breakthrough before. Song Yunxiu looked at the shocked expressions on their faces and immediately realized that something was wrong. At that point, she was almost certain now that this cousin of hers had really become someone extraordinary. At the same time, once Song Shi felt that aura, her expression turned a little strange, and fourth uncle beside her also asked with the same strange look whether she was all right. Could there be something going on between those two? At that moment, Song Yunqi said excitedly to his sister that he knew Yunxiang still had a lot more good stuff on him. Then he told her about how Song Yunxiang had openly taken a pill and broken through to mid-stage Earth rank on the spot. He even said that from now on, he was going to treat Song Yunxiang like a real older brother. And he even urged his cousin's sister to do the same, because then his share of the pills would definitely be secured. After hearing that, Song Yunjin fell silent in thought. Her first reaction was irritation. She was annoyed that Song Yunxiang, with that same reckless young master temper, had actually swallowed such a priceless pill just to win face. If that pill had been sold instead, the Scarlet Luan army would not have had to worry about funding for a long time. But in the very next moment, she suddenly realized what Song Yunqi had just said. Song Yunxiang apparently still had many more pills in hand. That was when she truly lost her composure. Watching the two siblings react so dramatically, Song Yunxiu also decided that later she would find a chance to test Song Yunjin a little. If there was money to be made here, then she definitely wanted in. Just as everyone was gradually calming down, another powerful surge of soul power came from the side hall, and this time, the impact was even stronger than before. Even the wine pots on the banquet table were nearly shaken apart. That completely wiped out whatever presence and prestige Song Yunjin still had left in the room. In such a short span of time, three people in the Song family had actually broken through to heaven rank one after another. At this point, she truly wanted to know what secret was hidden inside that side hall. Meanwhile, Song Yunxiang inside the side hall was still complaining about the isolation array. Even though it had only been a temporary formation thrown together in a rush, the fact that it had failed after enduring just 3 heaven rank breakthroughs was still a little unexpected. The old master, on the other hand, kept pretending to stay calm, but inwardly he was already shaken. He had never imagined that Song Yunxiang's attainments and formations were no weaker than his skill in alchemy. Under normal circumstances, setting up a formation like that would cost a fortune. Standing nearby, Uncle Song Mu felt equally awkward. Song Yunxiang had casually pushed Ajin, Aga, and King Dai into heaven rank with external help, making old hands like them, who had hidden their strength for years, look almost ridiculous by comparison. King Dai herself was also full of shock. To her, that kind of breakthrough speed felt like the opening of a whole new world. Still, helping King Dai break through had indeed taken more effort. Ajin and Aga had both already been at Earth rank peak, while King Dai was only at early stage Earth rank. That one round had actually cost Song Yunxiang a full 20th of his reserves. King Dai knew perfectly well that an opportunity like this could never come without a price, so she once again made her pledge to Song Yunxiang. As a death-sworn retainer of the Song family, her life and body already belonged to the family. From now on, she was willing to become the sword in Song Yunxiang's hand and cut down every enemy who came for him. Still, Song Yunxiang also knew that her natural talent had its limits. From here on, it would be better for her to cultivate steadily and step by step. At the moment though, King Dai looked filthy enough to hurt the eyes, so Song Yunxiang had a sudden idea and directly used a purification array on her for a full, deep clean and proper like that. She finally looked the way the head maid of the eastern courtyard of the Song residence was supposed to look. At the same time, Ajin and Aga had already stabilized their cultivation. Next, it was time to figure out how to flex a little in front of the Kong family. But after breaking into heaven rank, Ajin suddenly told them that the soul power inside his body seemed to be connecting to something in the sky. That immediately caught Song Yunxiang's attention. The kid could actually sense the existence of the star web, which meant his talent in spiritual perception was seriously high. Later on, getting him a mech built to enhance perception-type weapons would definitely be worth it. Before Ajin could wonder any further, the old master answered first, saying that it was the Heavenly Tao. He was probably worried that Song Yongxiang might blurt out the truth about the star web. Still, Heavenly Tao really was the common name used across several continents, since most Saint rank cultivators and a few Heaven rank ones could sense it. With everything basically ready, Aga immediately proposed that he and Ajin should just go grab the Kong family's Heaven rank expert and beat him up first. That was completely unnecessary. There was still no need to openly fall out with the Kong family. Song Yongxiang's original idea was simply to let the three of them show some muscle and intimidate the Kong family. If the matter could be resolved in a mild and low-key way, that would be best. After hearing that, Ajin quickly suggested that the three of them change into the gate guard uniforms of the Song residence's eastern courtyard, greet the Kong family as honored guests, and casually flex a little in the process. The moment Song Yongxiang saw how quickly the kid caught on, he knew Ajin had a bright future ahead. The old master also approved of the plan. The Song family had kept a low profile for more than 10 years. It really was time to show the outside world a little of what they could do. If nobody dares test it, how would they know who really has the longer reach? Meanwhile, over at the landing platform in the outer courtyard of the Song residence, that bootlicker Song Yunrui was already standing there with a group of people, eagerly waiting for his manipulative goddess to arrive. But right at that critical moment, 3 crisp footsteps suddenly echoed through the air behind them. The sound scared Song Yunrui and the others badly, and when they turned around, they discovered that those Heaven rank experts were actually dressed in the uniforms of gate guards from the Song residence's eastern courtyard. Heaven rank gate guards personally coming out to receive guests. What kind of situation was this? Not long before that, the Kong family was still on the way to the banquet. Inside the flying vessel, that grandfather-granddaughter pair kept trampling one side while praising the other. They talked about Sun Xia like he was some once-in-an-age treasure, while tearing Song Yongxiang down like he was nothing more than a worthless weed. Even City Lord Kong felt they were going too far. Sun Xia was still only at black rank right now. With that level of strength, he would not even qualify to serve as a guard in the City Lord's manor. But the old man shot back that he had sensed a faint transcendent aura on Sun Xia, and that the boy might really become the host of the Star Soul General Seo Rin in the future. That statement really did shock City Lord Kong, but since he himself was only Earth rank, he still did not dare fully trust his father's judgment. Seeing the doubt on his face, Old Master Kong stated firmly that with his Heaven rank spiritual senses, there was absolutely no way he could be mistaken. He had felt that same transcendent aura before on that person, so this could not be wrong. Even so, people could not make decisions based on feeling alone. As the Lord of Yangmen City, Kong fans still believed there was no need to completely fall out with the Song family tonight. If Sun Xia was lying to them, there would be no turning back. The moment she heard her father questioning brother Sun Xia, Kong Xingxin blew up on the spot. In her heart, brother Sun Xia would never deceive her. If anyone was lying, then it was Song Yongxiang, who used crooked tricks to pose as the host of the Star Soul General Zuo Si and fool everyone. At that point, Old Master Kong stepped in to stir things up as well. He said that if Song Yongxiang turned out to be the same worthless mess he used to be, then he would flip the table on the spot and cut ties without hesitation, which would also give him the perfect excuse to blow up. But if Song Yongxiang really was the host of the Star Soul General Zuo Si, then they would have Kong Xingxin keep stringing him along on the surface while they secretly nurtured Sun Xia and slowly moved against the Song family's assets from the shadows. The moment that plan was laid out, Kong fan agreed on the spot. In the end, the old fox had finally shown his real tail. Naturally, Kong Xingxin was not pleased to hear her grandfather say that. She kept quiet on the surface, but inwardly she had already decided that she was going to cause real trouble at the Song family banquet tonight. If Song Yongxiang had not known about their schemes, that would have been one thing. But now that he did know, there was no way he was going to let them run wild inside the Song family. Meanwhile, over at the Song residence landing platform, Song Yunrui was shocked the moment he saw the headmaid King Dai appear. King Dai calmly told young Master Yunrui that the three of them had come under Song Yongxiang's orders to receive the Kong family's honored guests. But anyone with eyes could tell they were not there to offer some warm welcome. Steward Song Shui then reminded young Master Yunrui to pay attention to the cultivation of those three. Since the Eastern Courtyard had sent them here, there was definitely a deeper purpose behind it. Song Shui also seemed to recognize Ejin and Aga from somewhere in the Song residence, and he suspected the two of them might belong to the secret force the old Marquis had been raising in the shadows. Song Yunrui had heard of the Song residence's shadow guards before, so he had already guessed that this was a real possibility. Still, he could not understand why the old Marquis would send shadow guards to receive honored guests. Just as he was still trying to work it out, the flying vessel carrying the Kong family landed on the platform, leaving him no chance to think further. And the moment he saw Kong Xingxin, he actually lowered his head on purpose and went forward with a fake, gentlemanly posture to greet her. nearly throwing the Song family's dignity straight into the trash. The truth was that the two of them had always been classmates in the Mecha Martial Academy Preparatory Division, but Kang Jingxin still acted as if she knew nothing and deliberately asked what relation Song Yunrui had to Song Yongxiang. Song Yunrui then put on a disdainful look and said that Song Yongxiang was just his cousin. He really had to put on that little act for no reason at all. As the daughter of a city lord, there was no way Kang Jingxin did not already know all this. Yet she still pretended to be all harmless and innocent, praising Song Yunrui for being such a fine and capable young master from a noble family. The moment his goddess praised him like that, Song Yunrui was practically floating. But in truth, Kang Jingxin had long since seen him for what he was. Just another horny fool lusting after her body. At that point, her father Kang Fan also stepped forward to greet Song Yunrui and put on a fake smile, praising his handsome appearance and saying that he truly looked worthy of being the descendant of Song Bo, the Song family's business genius. After getting hit by that double blast of sugar-coated praise from the father and daughter, Song Yunrui had already forgotten his own last name. At this point, he was probably already daydreaming about marrying into the Kang family in the future. Even old Master Kang was getting tired of watching the little performance between the two of them and Song Yunrui. Had they not agreed they were coming here to tear things apart tonight? Why had it suddenly turned into an act? Still, the old man was no easy piece of work either. Seeing that nobody stepped forward to greet him first, he decided to use that excuse to release his heaven rank aura and shake the whole place. The moment he let that aura spread, both Song Yunrui and Song Shui found themselves struggling to withstand it, and the Kang father and daughter instantly understood what he was doing. Old Master Kang was clearly trying to use this chance to slap the Song family with an opening show of force. Too bad for him, today he was destined to kick a steel plate. As the saying goes, 2 fists cannot beat 4 hands, and Song Yongxiang had arranged not 4, but 6. In the blink of an eye, 3 more heaven rank auras appeared on the scene, and they instantly blew apart old Master Kang's aura that left the city lord and his daughter completely stunned. Those 3 people who had looked so ordinary just moments ago had actually overpowered the Kang family's only heaven rank expert. That was the last thing they had expected. Before they could recover, King Dai began introducing Ujin and Aga, saying that just like her, they were merely ordinary gate guards and maids from the eastern courtyard of the Song residence, and that they had only come under Song Yunxiang's orders to welcome the honored guests of the Kang family. Hearing that, old Master Kang was practically dumbfounded. He had never imagined that even the people guarding the gates of the Song residence would be heaven rank experts. This was completely different from the intelligence he had. So now the question was, should they still break off the marriage or not? Meanwhile, while King Dai and the others went to receive old Master Kang, Song Yongxiu had already learned from her mother that Song Yongxiang had earth spirit pills in his possession. Madame Qing was still furious, cursing that little smart aleck Yunqi for actually kneeling on the spot just for the sake of pills, throwing away all dignity. But Song Yongxiu had long since seen through all that. Those 2 siblings from the northern courtyard still felt off to her. Soon after, she told her mother what she had in mind. The mother and daughter planned to work together later and secure this big deal for themselves. The only problem was that medicine-related business had always been handled by concubine Zhao, and Madame Cheng had never been entirely happy about that. So if they really wanted to move on this deal, Song Yongxiu and her mother would have to plan carefully first. Just then, the side hall doors opened, and Song Yongxiang, the old master, and Uncle Song Mu walked out together. The moment Song Yongxiang saw Song Yunjin and Yunqi standing by the door, he understood at once. Both of them were earth-rank cultivators, so they had most likely sensed the breakthrough fluctuations from inside the side hall. Sure enough, the second Song Yongxiang came out. Yunqi rushed right up to him and volunteered to be his personal test subject for pills, all while acting extremely respectful. But the strangest change of all was Song Yongxiu. She actually took the initiative to invite Song Yongxiang to sit in her father's seat. It seemed she had also heard about what had happened in the side hall. Not long after Song Yongxiang sat down, the gate guards came to report that the Kang family's flying vessel had landed, and that young Master Yunrui, together with the Eastern Courtyard people, were already receiving them. To make sure the Kang family had an unforgettable banquet tonight, the old Marquis had even prepared a special gift for them. Now all that remained was to see whether the Kang family would like the display that the Song residents had arranged. And if it was not enough, there was always room to add a little more. At the outer courtyard landing platform, the Song residence's people were already lined up and waiting to receive the Kang family party. Kang Xingxin, whose cultivation was too low to understand what had just happened, still walked lightly toward the banquet hall, completely unaware. But the city lord was in a very different state. That clash of heaven rank auras had completely shaken his confidence. At this point, forget continuing forward. He probably did not even have the nerve to turn back and retreat to the flying vessel. Old Master Kang was wavering now as well. In front of him stood 3 heaven rank experts from the Song family, who were all absurdly young. and all three of them were still dressed like servants. The only conclusion he could come to was that the Song residents must be using some crooked trick to fool him. Otherwise, how could such young heaven-rank cultivators possibly exist and still be willing to serve as subordinates in the Song family? Convinced that he had seen through the truth, he called Kong Fan to come with him and kept walking inside. He wanted to see with his own eyes what kind of trick the Song family was playing. But when they reached a corner, Old Master Kong suddenly grabbed Kong Fan and began whispering something to him. Right after that, Old Master Kong took out a gentleman's sword star, Soul General Talisman, and handed it to Kong Fan, telling him that if things went south later, he was to grab his granddaughter and run immediately. The moment Kong Fan took the talisman, he started worrying and asked his father what he was supposed to do if he gave the talisman away. But just as Old Master Kong said he still had a spare, a figure suddenly appeared near the pavilion in the distance. The one who showed up was none other than Xia Bijie, the Eastern Courtyard's driver. If someone surnamed Kong really dared to cause trouble in the Song family, then they had better first ask whether one of the former 6 heroes of the Black Armor would allow it. The instant Xia Bijie's aura locked onto him, Old Master Kong's right leg went weak on the spot, and he dropped straight to one knee. By the time he barely recovered, Xia Bijie had already vanished without a trace. The only thing left behind was the cigarette butt he had been smoking. At that point, Old Master Kong could only let Kong Fan help him back up. Xia Bijie's move had not done much actual damage, but the humiliation was absolutely brutal. After that little episode, the Kong family could only keep moving toward the banquet hall at a much slower pace. But after being struck like that, Old Master Kong's entire aura had visibly withered. He truly had not expected that. Beyond those 3 young heaven-rank experts, the Song family was still hiding even stronger monsters in the dark. And while he was still thinking about all of this, he suddenly felt another unfamiliar, yet powerful aura lock onto him again, forcing him to turn and look in that direction. The sight nearly scared the life out of him. From the shadows at the alley entrance, the figure of a man sitting in a wheelchair slowly emerged. If old Xia had already come out to play, then old Ma was naturally not about to stay hidden. The Song family's anger was not something that could be settled so easily. This time, Old Ma locked directly onto Old Master Kong's heart. If the man dared to covet the Song family's assets, then he could consider his heart fair game. The shock of that second hit was too much. The aging Old Master Kong coughed up blood on the spot. After Kong Fan helped him back to his feet, he turned to look toward the alley once more, only to find that Old Ma had already disappeared like a ghost. In truth, King Dai had been able to vaguely sense both of those incidents just now. She had already noticed something while still back in the Eastern Courtyard, but she had not expected the two of them to really make a move today. And on the distant tower, Song Mu had also quietly appeared behind them. The old Marquise's order had originally only been for them to intimidate the Kong family without making it obvious, but judging from the results, those two had been a little too heavy-handed. Old Ma, however, did not care in the slightest. In his words, the fact that he had not crushed their balls on the spot was already him showing enough respect to the court. At the same time, Old Master Kong was furious. The Song family had secretly hidden this many experts, and once he got back, he was determined to report to the court that the Song family was harboring rebellious intent and even try to pin a charge of treason on them. But in the very next moment, he nearly broke down. If the Song family was willing to show this much power tonight, did that mean they had no intention of letting the Kong family leave alive? Was the Kong family really about to be finished here today? After being bullied in turn by old Xia and old Ma, Old Master Kong could barely even walk properly now. That was what he got for becoming arrogant the moment he broke into heaven rank. Tonight's Hongmin banquet at the Song residence was not somewhere just anyone could walk out of safely. He probably knew he could not just sit there and wait for death, so he quietly took out the 3-star strength pill from the pouch in his sleeve, the same one Song Yongxiang had once provided for the Hong Clan Merchant Guild to sell. After learning that the Song residence had this many hidden experts, he no longer believed he could get his son and granddaughter out alive with him. So the only thing he could do now was swallow the pill himself first, then construct a mech and flee through the air to save his own life. But just as he was about to swallow it, Song Mu flashed behind him in a single step and instantly released mid-stage heaven rank pressure, locking him in place so hard that the pill slipped straight from Old Master Kong's hand and fell to the ground. That truly scared Old Master Kong out of his wits, because the strength Song Mu had just shown was even greater than that of old Xia and old Ma. Since entering the Song residence, he had already encountered 6 people who were either at his level or even stronger. It was easy to imagine just how badly his mental state had collapsed by now. Meanwhile, King Dai, who was leading the way, had already entered the banquet hall and announced that the honored guest from the Kong family had arrived. Hearing that, Old Master Song Jingsong actually put on a serious face and said they should hurry up and bring out the Sona players to welcome the Kong family guests. The moment King Dai heard that order, she was completely dumbfounded. Playing Sona at a family banquet? Was this supposed to be dinner, or had it suddenly turned into a funeral send-off? Fortunately, the old master quickly added that he was joking. Otherwise, with the efficiency of the shadow guards, some mountain outside the city might already have gained a few fresh pits. After that, Kong Xingxin entered the banquet hall first as the Kong family's vanguard, stepping in ahead of the others and greeting all the elders. Close behind her came her father, Kong Fan, who bowed respectfully to the old master and then offered his greetings to the ladies of the Song family present. No matter what, the Kong family still belonged to the court now, so at least on the surface, the Song residents could not afford to be careless with etiquette. After both sides exchanged greetings, the old Marquis asked why Old Master Kong had not come in with them. At that moment, Old Master Kong, still outside and shaken badly by everything that had happened, had finally managed to recover a little and was preparing to walk quickly into the banquet hall to meet the old Marquis. Seeing his father acting so strangely, Kong Fan immediately suspected that, with his heaven-rank spiritual senses, his father must have noticed something unusual hidden within the Song residence. While Kong Fan was still lost in thought, Old Master Kong had already stepped into the banquet hall with both feet. The moment he came in, the old Marquis immediately locked onto him with peak heaven-rank pressure. The instant that pressure fell on him, Old Master Kong froze in place. An early-stage heaven rank being targeted by a peak heaven rank might as well be one step away from instant death, so he did not dare make a single unnecessary move. But at that exact moment, his useless legs knocked into each other, and with a loud thud, Old Master Kong actually dropped right at the entrance of the banquet hall, like he was bowing everyone a New Year greeting. Seeing that, even Kong Xingxin was stunned. From the outer courtyard all the way here, her grandfather had already embarrassed himself several times. If he kept going like this, how was he supposed to wrestle with the Song family later? Song Yongxiang naturally took the chance to tease them. The Kong family may have arrived a little late, but for Old Master Kong to punish himself like this was really unnecessary. The moment he said that, the entire third generation of the Song family burst into laughter. To ease the humiliation, Old Master Kong could only force himself to say that he had simply been too excited to see the old Marquis and accidentally tripped. Seeing that, the old Marquis's anger faded by half, and he even gave Song Yongxiang a thumbs up. In truth, the old man had tripped because Song Yongxiang had already set a formation at the entrance as thin as a thread. Song Yongxiang shot the old Marquis a look in return. The old man had made a move too just now, so there was no way Song Yongxiang was carrying all the blame alone. The warning had already been delivered, and the Kong family probably would not dare stir up trouble tonight. So Song Yongxiang immediately gave the order for the maids to begin serving dishes and pouring wine. After being played with like that in secret, the two leading figures of the Kong family now looked like they were sitting on needles. But Kong Xingxin, that manipulative schemer, clearly did not see it that way. Had they not agreed they were coming tonight to break off the engagement forcefully? So why were the two elders of her family now sitting there obediently and eating? She had no intention of letting the plan collapse like this. So as soon as the dishes were served, she stood up at once, ready to state the true purpose of their visit. But before she could finish a sentence, her grandfather barked at her to shut up. Old Master Kong had no desire at all to die here tonight. Sensing that things were off, Kong Fan also hurried to tell his daughter to listen to her grandfather first, sit down, eat, and wait to see how things developed. After finally controlling his granddaughter, the Kong family immediately apologized to the old Marquis and asked him not to take offense. After that, nobody at the table dared mention the broken engagement again, and the atmosphere instead became strangely harmonious. But in Kong Xingxin's heart, she had no intention of letting it end there. She and Sun Xia had already crossed the line, so this engagement had to be broken no matter what. Since she could not speak openly now, she decided to shift her attention onto that bootlicker Song Yunrui. Just then, the communicator on Song Yongxiang's hand suddenly lit up with an incoming call. After briefly informing everyone, Song Yongxiang got up, went to the side hall, and answered it. The call was from shopkeeper Hong of the Hong Clan Merchant Guild. There had been progress on the ingredients Song Yongxiang asked them to source. Out of the 4 medicines, they could currently secure 3. The problem was the main ingredient called the Boundless Flower. It was extremely rare on the market, and the only lead they had was that the Mai clan in Sand Sculpture City of the Lower Domain Nation had one. Without it, the medicine needed for third great uncle could not be made. While Song Yongxiang was on the call, Kong Xingxin also took the chance to go chat with Song Yunrui. The moment she opened her mouth, she started praising Song Yunrui as the most outstanding young man she had ever met, then used the old Marquis's favoritism towards Song Yongxiang to stir things up between them. While they were talking, Old Master Kong was busy raising a toast to the old Marquis. After everything that had happened tonight, the only thing on his mind now was that Kong Xingxin had better not make any more trouble. He still wanted to enjoy a few more years of life. Meanwhile, Song Yongxiang stayed focused on the call in the side hall. Based on the information shopkeeper Hong gave him, it looked like he really needed to make a trip to Sand Sculpture City in the Lower Domain Nation himself. That place sat on the eastern border of the Lower Domain Nation and was surrounded by the Death Desert. It was an important military stronghold used to defend against ferocious beasts and suppress the demonkin. As the lower domain nation rapidly expanded into the eastern desert in recent years, more and more people had gathered there. The city had existed for less than a century, yet it had already undergone several expansions, and within its towering walls, 4 major districts had gradually taken shape. The powerful families lived in the heavily protected inner district, enjoying decadent and luxurious lives. The western district housed over 90% of Sand Sculpture City's military power, so it was also known as the city's strongest defensive zone. The middle district, built around the inner district, served as the city's commercial center, where almost every kind of service and entertainment could be found. As for the outermost district, it was home to the poor, the servants, and the fallen drifters, which was why most people simply called it the slums. The Mai clan, which held that boundless flower, was based in Sand Sculpture City's western district. They belonged to the expansionist faction of the Mulu clan in the lower domain nation, and controlled more than 60% of the Western District's military forces. If it had been the neutral faction or the moderate faction instead, the Hong Clan Merchant Guild might still have had some room to negotiate. But the expansionists had always been hostile toward Tiandu Nation merchants, which made this much harder. Aside from the boundless flower, the rest of the ingredients could probably be delivered to the Song residents in about 10 days. However, the Samoan clan, which controlled those ingredients, did not accept money. They only wanted to trade for ferocious beast materials. Hearing that, Song Yongxiang was annoyed. Those people really knew how to calculate things in their own favor. Still, this worked out in a way. Song Yongxiang already needed real combat to stabilize his Earth rank cultivation, and he also needed to search the Death Desert for the Star-Lord's secret realm, so he could personally gather the beast materials himself. Hearing that, shopkeeper Hong was finally relieved. Even so, he still reminded Song Yongxiang that the Mai clan of Sand Sculpture City was powerful, and he should not do anything too risky. Once shopkeeper Hong said that, Song Yongxiang suddenly thought of 2 key people. With luck, those 2 might actually be able to help on this trip. At the same time, Song Yongxiu finally could not stand it anymore. Watching the 2 of them gossip so openly about the Song residents, she stepped in to shut it down. She already knew Kong Jingxin had bad intentions, so she warned her directly not to stir up trouble inside the Song residence, or the consequences would be ugly. The moment she heard that warning, Kong Jingxin instantly switched back to her fake innocent act and said she truly admired Song Yongxiu's cousin and that everything she had said before was meant as praise. But Song Yongxiu had already seen right through her. She knew this woman was trying to use her idiot brother as a weapon, so she bluntly warned her back. Unless she wanted to see a young woman's corpse making the news tomorrow, she had better stop doing stupid things. After hearing that, Kong Jingxin dropped the innocent act altogether. She flatly said that with a single word from her, she could get Yong'an City's tax office to help Song Yongxiu handle the Song family's investment business. She was clearly picking a fight. And yet that blockhead actually turned around and told Song Yongxiu that Kong Jingxin could definitely help their family business. That stupid line nearly made Song Yongxiu pass out on the spot. It was not just Song Yongxiu. Even Song Yunjin and Song Yunqi at the next table were left speechless. Nobody with a brain should have said something that traitorous. While they were all busy watching each other make fools of themselves, Song Yongxiang had already finished his call and walked back out from the side hall. The moment she saw him return, Kong Jingxin unexpectedly took the initiative to greet him. The second Song Yongxiang saw that look on her face, he knew something was off. He just did not know what exactly she had been up to a moment ago. Even the 2 Kong elders found it strange. Had their granddaughter not always hated Song Yongxiang? Why was she suddenly acting so warm today? All they could do was hope she was not pulling some new trick. To play along with her act, Song Yongxiang deliberately went with it and chatted with her as if the 2 of them were getting along extremely well. But Song Yunrui, who had just been flattered into the clouds by Kong Jingxin, could no longer stand it. In his mind, Song Yongxiang was still the same shameless playboy from back then. After a few provoking words from Kong Jingxin, he finally snapped. Tonight, he absolutely wanted Song Yongxiang to embarrass himself in front of his goddess. So this peak black rank brat actually challenged Song Yongxiang in public and declared that they should decide who would marry Kong Jingxin through a duel between Star Soul generals. He had barely finished speaking when Song Yunqi sent him flying with a kick that even stunned Song Yongxiang for a moment. He really had not expected the one to step in would be Song Yunqi. It looked like the kid was truly going all in for those Earth Spirit pills. Seeing Song Yunqi actually stand on his side this time, Song Yongxiang was a little surprised himself. It was rare for the kid to act properly for once. Maybe this mess really could be left for him to handle later. Song Yunrui knew perfectly well that he was no match for Song Yunqiu, but under Kong Jingxin's constant baiting, he still could not hold back. Today, he absolutely had to make Song Yongxiang lose face. So in the next moment, he turned to Song Yongxiang again and suggested that since they had not seen each other in a while, they should use a Star Soul General spar to add some entertainment to the banquet tonight. He then shamelessly added that he remembered Song Yongxiang only being at early stage yellow rank when he left last year, and that after spending a year at the Mecha Martial Academy, he surely must have improved. But he assured Song Yongxiang that he would suppress his cultivation to match his level and would not take advantage of him. After hearing that, everyone in the Song family was left speechless. They honestly had no idea what could possibly save this fool anymore. Seeing that Song Yongqi was about to charge forward and hit him again, Song Yongxiang quickly stepped in to stop him and personally accepted Song Yunrui's challenge. The moment Song Yongxiang accepted the challenge, Madam Ching immediately tried to step forward and stop it. But Song Yongxiu held her back and explained that this was actually the perfect chance to see Song Yongxiang's real strength for themselves. Besides, they were all family, so nobody would go too far. And if Song Yunrui was not taught a lesson now, he would definitely keep getting played by that scheming woman. Seeing that no one else was stopping him, Song Yunrui immediately told steward Song Shui to arrange the training ground for the duel. The second money got mentioned, the old marquis cut in on the spot and righteously declared that there was no need for such an expensive setup for a mere spar between juniors, and that the open ground outside the banquet hall would be enough. Then he turned to Old Master Kong and suggested that since the juniors were putting on a little show for the banquet, the elders should also contribute something. And after saying that, he shamelessly piled on, suggesting that since Brother Kong had come a long way as a guest, his side should provide something for the winner as a prize. Hearing that, Old Master Kong nearly choked on his own anger. Inwardly he was cursing, wondering if these people even remembered that the Kong family were supposed to be the guests. Since when did guests pay for the entertainment? But at this point, he was already riding a tiger and could not get off. He was the one who had led the charge to the Song family to break off the engagement after all. So the only thing he could do was bring out the revitalization pill he had worked so hard to acquire at auction from the Hong Clan Merchant Guild and offer it up. Kong Fan was stunned the moment he saw his father actually take it out, blurting out that it was a life-saving pill meant for desperate moments. But Old Master Kong knew very well that if he did not bleed properly tonight, one pill alone would never be enough to guarantee his family walked out safely. As for that disobedient granddaughter of his, he could only settle accounts with her later. Song Yongxiu, of course, saw the revitalization pill in Old Master Kong's hand too. But what she could not understand was why the rest of the Song family seemed almost unmoved by such a treasure. The whole scene felt wrong, but the fool Song Yunrui noticed none of that. He excitedly cupped his hands and thanked Old Master Kong for his generosity. At least he had not wasted all his time reading. He knew exactly what the revitalization pill could do. As long as someone had not fully breathed their last, it could drag them back from death's door. On a battlefield, that was basically half an extra life. In his eyes, this was the deal of a lifetime. He could win the girl and the treasure at the same time, and he was so excited he was practically drooling. He had already started planning to present the pill to his father in Kong Jingxin's name afterward, then have his father beg the old master to switch the engagement over to him instead. If that happened, he could marry his goddess properly, have children with her, and live happily ever after. Just imagining it was enough to make him thrilled out of his mind. Meanwhile, Kong Jingxin had already noticed that the look in her grandfather's eyes carried a faint killing intent. Clearly, making him pay this price had already made him furious. Still, Song Yunrui was stupid enough to be useful. After the duel was over, she could always find a way to trick the pill back out of him. After finishing his fantasies, Song Yunrui strode toward the open ground full of confidence, convinced that both the manipulative goddess and the pill were already his. To make sure everyone could watch the fight, the old marquis ordered the maids to turn on a holographic projection inside the banquet hall. That way no one had to stampede outside just to watch in person. As for Song Yunrui's challenge, Song Yongxiang only had one thought. Today he was walking in with his hands in his pockets, and honestly did not know who here could even count as an opponent. If he had not wanted to treat this as a bit of post-dinner exercise, he could have just handed the whole thing off to Yunchu. The moment Song Yongxiang struck that pose, Song Yunrui immediately pulled out his Star Soul General talisman and started yelling again, still insisting that Song Yongxiang was not worthy of his goddess. By now, Song Yongxiang was so tired of hearing that kind of nonsense that his ears were about to grow calluses. He did not even remember Song Yunrui talking this much in the previous life. Seeing that Song Yongxiang still had not responded, Song Yunrui immediately constructed his Wei Yuan mech and summoned weapons into both hands. Then, when he saw that Song Yongxiang still had not constructed anything, he decided Song Yongxiang was stalling for time. After all, he still remembered that back when Song Yongxiang's soul veins were damaged, he could only maintain a Star Soul construct for 3 minutes. That was one thing Song Yongxiang absolutely could not let slide. Say anything else if you want, but calling him a 3-minute man was crossing the line. To keep the house from getting wrecked, he immediately flicked out 4 isolation array talismans behind him. The moment Song Yunrui saw that setup, he actually thought Song Yongxiang was preparing to use some underhanded trick against him. Song Yongxiang could barely even be bothered to mock him. How brainless could this guy get? Against someone like him, there was no need for tricks at all. At this point, Song Yongxiang only hoped the fool would not wet himself from fear in a moment. It was only after Song Yongxiang constructed Lu Bu's soul armor that Song Yunrui finally came to his senses. And once he probed with his aura, he immediately realized Song Yongxiang's cultivation had already surpassed his own. But before he could fully react, Song Yongxiang had already unleashed a falling moon slash and taken off one of his arms. For a disobedient cousin like this, only a hard lesson would work. Otherwise, when the beast tide truly came, how could he ever submit to Song Yongxiang? Song Yongxiang had no intention of watching family die again. Having been defeated in a single move, Song Yunrui was completely shattered. He could not believe Song Yongxiang had cut him down in one strike, and he even began to suspect that the man in front of him was some imposter. But of course, that was impossible. The only reason for all of this was simple. Song Yongxiang had truly returned. Meanwhile, 100 kilometers outside Sand Sculpture City in the Lower Domain Nation, a caravan was slowly making its way toward the city. They were traveling by camel. It was slower, but it was also less likely to attract the attention of the ferocious beasts lurking in the southern wasteland desert. But at that moment, a young man in the caravan suddenly told the leader that there was something strange in the sky. The leader looked up as well, and that thing was none other than the god-rank Kunping Song Yongxiang had encountered on his journey home. Was it really heading for Sand Sculpture City? That could not happen yet. The medicine for third great uncle had not even been collected. Back at the Song residence, the people in the banquet hall were all stunned speechless after seeing Song Yongxiang defeat Song Yunrui in a single move. At that point, City Lord Kong finally confirmed it for himself. Song Yongxiang was no longer the cripple with damaged soul veins from back then. The message sent earlier by the Grand Eunuch from the court had been absolutely correct. As for Old Master Kong, because he had spent the last 5 years in secluded cultivation, he was still unclear on many things happening outside. So for the moment, he still could not be certain whether what Song Yongxiang was wielding was truly the Star Soul General Zuo Si himself. But Kong Fan quickly told him about the rumor that had been spreading across Nanzhou lately, that the Star Soul General Zuo Si possessed the ability to take on the appearance of other Star Soul Generals. The moment he heard that, Old Master Kong was genuinely rattled. In his understanding, an ability like that was practically close to invincible, and the conversation on the Kong family side was also overheard by Madame Cheng and the others from the Song residence. So Madame Cheng immediately took the lead and asked the old Marquis whether that rumor was actually true. Faced with the family's mix of hope and unease, the old Marquis looked happier than ever. Then, with a deliberately mysterious tone, he asked everyone in the banquet hall whether they had heard about the Beast Tide battle in Yuanding City. The moment she heard that, Song Yongxiu immediately remembered the news reports. Back then, a red-armored Star Soul General had supposedly descended like a divine soldier and turned the entire battle around. Song Shi had also heard something similar during meetings at the academy. She only knew that Zuo Si's current host was a first-year student, but the exact name and class had never been made public. Seeing that everyone had already guessed most of it, the old Marquis stopped hiding it and admitted it openly. With clear pride, he declared that the person in question was none other than his own grandson, Song Yongxiang. Up until now, the Star Observatory had hidden Song Yongxiang's identity for the sake of the host's safety. But since the family now knew the truth, it was no longer a big issue. Becoming the host of a Star Soul General meant that his future path of cultivation could potentially go all the way to Saint Rank. To First Uncle's branch, that news was obviously enormous. From now on, First Uncle's voice in both the military and the court would carry far more weight. Madame Cheng was secretly delighted as well. If the Song family could rise again because of this, then her own standing within her maiden family would naturally rise too. For the sake of her son and daughter, she would have to fight for their proper share of the family future. But once she thought of it again, she felt uneasy. After all, she had not exactly treated Song Yongxiang especially well over the years. At this point, all she could do was swallow her pride and hope that he would show some mercy in the future. As for Old Master Kong, the biggest loser of the night, he immediately stood up and offered his congratulations to the old Marquis on having such an outstanding grandson. Then he forced a smile and added that he had always felt Song Yongxiang was blessed with extraordinary luck and talent, that the Song family was fortunate to have someone like him, and that the Kong family would be even more honored to have such a future son-in-law. Hearing her grandfather say that, Kong Xingxian was completely dumbfounded. Was this really the same grandfather who had been shouting this morning about coming to the Song family to cause trouble? But with the situation already like this, Kong Xingxian could only force herself to offer a few polite words of praise. In her heart, though, she still firmly believed that Brother Sun Xie was stronger than Song Yongxiang. The old Marquis naturally understood the Kong family's shameless attempt to save face, so he smiled and answered that this was a blessing earned by the Song family's ancestors, while whether it would be a blessing or disaster for the Kong family was another matter entirely. Just as the atmosphere was turning awkward, little Aunt Song Shi suddenly noticed that, on the screen, Song Yunrui had actually gotten back up and was preparing to counterattack. Even after losing an arm to Song Yongxiang in a single move, he still refused to admit the gap between them. He was even convinced that Song Yongxiang had used some kind of trick to fool everyone. Then he operated his mech and launched a move called Armor Sever Reconstruction, determined to crush Song Yongxiang's so-called cheap tricks once and for all. To be fair, that move really did count as a high-level combat technique. This kind of reconstruction required both highly complex calculations and extremely precise construction control. If it failed, the soul power wasted would not even be worth it compared to simply rebuilding the whole machine. The fact that Song Yunrui had mastered a technique like this at least proved he was not completely useless. He did have some real skill. Since that was the case, Song Yongxiang could not be bothered holding back anymore. He might as well test Song Yunrui properly while staying at the same cultivation level. Before Song Yunrui could even react, Song Yongxiang had already lowered both his cultivation and his mech to peak black rank and switched into the standard Weiyuan Academy unit used at Nanzhou Mecha Martial Academy. But that move only made Song Yunrui more convinced that Song Yongxiang was playing tricks, because at that moment, Song Yongxiang's aura really did feel identical to his own. The idiot charged straight at him without hesitation, and even convinced himself that the Earth rank aura from earlier had just been some cheap illusion. Facing Song Yunrui at full power, Song Yongxiang simply moved with calm precision, dodging every attack with ease. Still, to be fair, the kid's tactics and combat techniques did have some real level to them. Unfortunately for him, the opponent he met tonight was Song Yongxiang. Watching from afar, Old Ma and Old Xia both caught a hint that something was off. Old Xia recognized it at a glance. The movement technique Song Yongxiang was using was clearly one of the Black Armor Guard's exclusive footwork arts. Old Ma was just as puzzled, because as far as he knew, no one in the Song residence besides the two of them should have known it. So the two quickly guessed that maybe that little girl had contacted Song Yongxiang in secret at some point. As for Song Yongxiang, he had already grown bored of this match. It was time to end it. The best way to beat someone was to crush them using the same kind of move they relied on. Otherwise, a guy like Song Yunrui would just keep refusing to accept it. To his credit, Song Yunrui was not completely stupid. The moment he saw Song Yongxiang leap into the air, he crossed both swords in front of him and prepared to block, but he was still too naive. Song Yongxiang had only copied his style to lower his guard, then used a sudden stop in his movement technique to slip instantly around to his back. Then came a brutal kick. That kind of timing and instinct, forged through years of real combat, was not something a rookie like Song Yunrui could ever have predicted. After being kicked flat to the ground, Song Yunrui immediately started shouting that Song Yongxiang had used dirty tricks to toy with him. But on a real battlefield, nobody was going to stop and argue fairness with him. In response, Song Yongxiang directly showed his disgust. This useless, furious tantrum Song Yunrui was throwing was nothing but an embarrassment to the Song family. Still, this also happened to be a good chance to test him a little further. So Song Yongxiang deliberately provoked him, saying that he should stop wasting time on paper theories and flashy moves that looked good but did nothing. Or else it was no wonder. Second uncle never thought much of him. Compared to that bastard, Song Yunrui was far too lacking. The moment he heard the words "that bastard," Song Yunrui stiffened inside his mech. He instantly panicked. How did Song Yongxiang know that person existed? Could it be that his sister's suspicions had all been right? Watching from outside, his older cousin also fell into thought. She could tell Song Yongxiang's combat experience was incredibly seasoned, which made her even more curious about what exactly he had gone through over the past year. King Dai, who was also watching from outside, showed unmistakable admiration. The young master she now served had already become a completely different person from before, but when she snapped back to attention, she suddenly realized that Uncle Song Mu, who had been standing behind her all this time, had vanished. In truth, Song Mu had not gone far. He had simply used a single-step movement art to appear beside another cluster of onlookers not far away. The moment he appeared, Old Ma started complaining at once, telling him to stop acting like a ghost and always appearing behind people without warning. Song Mu did not even bother responding to that complaint. Instead, he sternly demanded to know when Old Ma and Old Xia had taught young Master Yongxiang the Black Armor Guard movement technique. Seeing how serious he was, Old Ma immediately denied it. He and Old Shai had spent all these years hiding their names and living quietly because they feared that person above might suspect the Song family still had ties to the Black Armor Guard. After that, Old Ma voiced the conclusion he and Old Xia had come to. This matter might be connected to Dalan, the current commander of the Black Armor Guard. But Uncle Song Mu felt that did not make much sense. Over the years, Commander Dai had poured an enormous amount of effort, both openly and in secret, into rebuilding the Black Armor Guard. If something like this came to light, the consequences would be serious. Old Xia, on the other hand, told him to stop overthinking it. It was only a movement technique, not some absolute state secret. As the son of third master, it was not strange at all for young Master Yangxiang to know a couple of his father's self-created combat arts. At the same time, Song Yangxiang was still probing Song Yunrui for information about the so-called Song family bastard. The moment Song Yunrui heard the word bastard, he visibly froze. He kept denying that he knew anything, but in truth, it seemed he and his sister Song Yangxiu already had some answer in mind. Even so, judging from his reaction, Song Yangxiang still could not tell how much he really knew. If they were talking about a traitor and an illegitimate child, then the most suspicious person was still second Uncle Song Bo, that notorious womanizer. Just as Song Yangxiang was about to press him further, Song Yunrui suddenly burst forward and charged at him. That actually surprised Song Yangxiang a little. The kid's speed and explosive power were both decent. If someone really helped raise his cultivation, he might actually become useful. Seeing Song Yangxiang standing still, Song Yunrui immediately leapt into the air and condensed 2 war blades, sweeping them out in a crossing arc. Then he drove them straight down toward the vital point of Song Yangxiang's mech. Fortunately, what he struck was only an afterimage made of soul power. Otherwise, that blow really could have ended the fight on the spot. Song Yangxiang was starting to get annoyed. The brat really did not know his place. He had been given a chance, and instead of taking it, he went straight for a killing move. If Song Yangxiang had not just dodged with 7 steps upon the stars, he might actually have been hurt. When it came time to answer questions, the kid refused to talk properly. But once they started fighting, every move he made went straight for the kill. Since that was the case, Song Yangxiang could only teach second uncle's son a proper lesson on his behalf. What Song Yangxiang did not know was that the moment he used 7 steps upon the stars, the old men watching from outside were completely stunned. The floating movement technique he used before could still barely be explained away. But once 7 steps upon the stars appeared, it became much harder to explain. Because of that, old Xia immediately suggested that Uncle Song Mu contact Commander D, and Song Mu at once went to consult the old Marquis about what to do next. At the same time, everyone in the banquet hall was also shocked by Song Yangxiang's movement art. He had not even reached heaven rank, yet he could already borrow force in midair. That alone was enough to stun the whole room. Yong'an City Lord Kong Fan was also deeply shaken, because in Song Yangxiang he suddenly saw a trace of Song Lang from back in the day. Old Master Kong, meanwhile, recognized the movement art as one belonging to the Black Armor Guard, and that immediately made him suspect that Song Yangxiang might have some connection to Commander Dai. That only made him more afraid that he might not leave the Song residence alive tonight. Yet even now, what his foolish granddaughter cared about most was how to get the pill back. She clearly had not expected Song Yangxiang to have become this formidable. So now, the only hope she could cling to was that Brother Sun Xia would later bring the White Dragon Gang to help her snatch her grandfather's pill back, and maybe teach Song Yangxiang a lesson while he was at it. While everyone was still focused on the Black Armor Guard movement technique, Song Yangxiang seized the chance and once again pressed Song Yunrui about the Song family bastard. But Song Yunrui's mouth was as stubborn as ever. He even blurted out that Song Yangxiang himself was the bastard. In that case, Song Yangxiang was going to find out today whether Song Yunrui's mouth was harder or his fists were. And while he was at it, he was going to teach everyone present one simple truth. In real life, even arrogance needs strength to back it up. With a single palm strike from Song Yangxiang, Song Yunrui's mech was blasted so hard that the Star Soul construct collapsed on the spot. Song Yunrui himself was sent flying by the shockwave, slammed to the edge of the field, then bounced and crashed back onto the ground. Luckily, he had cultivation protecting him. If it had been an ordinary person, they would have died on the spot. Looking at Song Yunrui sprawled on the ground, Song Yangxiang showed no brotherly softness and stepped right onto him. This question was tied to the Song family's future, so he decided to give Song Yunrui one last chance to think carefully and speak honestly. Meanwhile, far outside Sand Sculpture City in the Lower Domain Nation, the caravan leader from earlier and the young man under him had somehow survived right beneath the nose of the god-rank beast. Before hiding deeper in the desert, the two of them had seen that god-rank creature spit out a pile of something nearby before it left. When they finally climbed down into that crater, they found a mass of mysterious red crystals inside. And within those crystals, there seemed to be a person sealed inside. Were these remains shed by a god-rank being, or something even stranger? Back at the Song residence, Song Yunrui, pinned under Song Yangxiang's foot, was naturally still unconvinced. What he could not understand was why Song Yangxiang cared so much about information on that bastard. He clearly felt he needed to go back and discuss it with his sister first. From the look in his eyes, Song Yangxiang could tell he was still hiding the truth. Since he refused to talk now, the only option was to let the shadow guards keep investigating. In the end, they were still family. Song Yunrui might be no match for him, but humiliating him too far would only make things harder down the line. So Song Yangxiang withdrew the isolation arrays around them. There was no longer any reason to keep the match going. Everyone in the banquet hall was stunned that Song Yangxiang had won so easily. The strength he had just shown was on a completely different level from the Song Yongxiang they remembered. The old marquis was secretly delighted as well. After this fight, no one in the Song family would likely dare look down on Song Yongxiang again. At the same time, Uncle Song Mu used a flash step and returned to stand behind the headmaid King Dai. The moment she saw him, King Dai reported that a maid had been sneaking around in the tree opposite them, secretly watching the entire match. Song Mu immediately identified her as the probationary maid who had been transferred in from the outer courtyard. Even so, he told King Dai not to alert her yet. He guessed that young Master Yongxiang had already made arrangements on his side. And sure enough, that probationary maid really had been hiding in the trees outside the central courtyard, watching the entire fight. She had also written everything she observed about Song Yongxiang into a report journal meant for Milan Nation. What she did not know was how many of her own people that information would end up killing later. And farther away, hidden in a tower, was little Zissou, whom Song Yongxiang had stationed there the whole time. Ever since receiving Song Yongxiang's order that morning, Zissou had been secretly tailing that probationary maid. The only problem was that the information the maid recorded was pretty ridiculous. It was not that there were no main points at all, but very little of it was actually useful. The moment the match ended, the old marquis immediately took Old Master Kong's 3-star revitalization pill and gave him no chance to back out. Then the shameless old fox grinned and asked Old Master Kong whether the match had been entertaining and whether the prize had been worth it. Old Master Kong was already stuck deep in the mud and had no room to say otherwise, so he could only bitterly praise Song Yongxiang's strength and then add that Song Yongxiang and his granddaughter were truly a perfect match. Good thing Song Yongxiang had returned in time, because he wanted no part of that nonsense. He was definitely not suited for that precious two-faced girl from the Kong family. The moment Song Yongxiang returned, Kong Xingxin also put on a fake smile and praised him a few times. But inside, she was furious. At this point, the Kong family's lost face and lost pill would probably have to be recovered by that good brother she kept under her skirt. Holding the 3-star revitalization pill in his hand, the old marquis smiled and told him that he probably wouldn't be needing it anymore, so he would just keep the gift for him. Song Yongxiang naturally had no interest in a pill of that level. Taking low-grade pills like that always left behind pill toxins in the body. Besides, it was not as if he lacked better ones. That was the moment Old Master Kong was truly shaken. He had spent a fortune to get a single low-grade revitalization pill, yet Song Yongxiang casually produced an entire bottle of top-grade ones. To him, that was even more frightening than Song Yongxiang's strength. The moment that bottle appeared, every woman present was stunned. Right after that, their eyes all turned toward the old marquis. After all, who would not want a top-grade revitalization pill that could restore some lost youth? At the same time, an ordinary maid entered the banquet hall and said she had something to report to the chief steward. Earlier, the old marquis had ordered the servants to help search for the pill Old Master Kong had accidentally dropped, and it just so happened that this maid had found it. So now it was being returned to its owner. The moment he heard his pill had been recovered, Old Master Kong hurried over to check whether it was intact. But after seeing those top-grade revitalization pills, his own strength pill no longer looked nearly as precious. Just moments ago, it had been his life-saving trump card. Now it felt almost worthless by comparison. Uncle Song Mu immediately praised the maid for returning what she found and told her to go to the treasury and receive an extra reward. Seeing that, Song Yongxiang proposed that he be the one to provide the reward. Someone that honest deserved to be rewarded properly. Still, since the maid had no cultivation at all, he guessed her natural aptitude was probably poor. By chance, Song Yongxiang happened to have 2 pills on hand. The red one was a jade skin pill, which could make the skin fair and flawless as jade. The blue one was a spirit seed pill, which could grant cultivation aptitude even to an ordinary person. Beauty or strength, the choice was hers. The moment Song Yongxiang finished explaining their effects, the banquet hall erupted again. The women's eyes were almost all locked onto the jade skin pill, while the men's attention was fixed on the spirit seed pill. To them, either choice was a priceless treasure. To test the maid a little more, Song Yongxiang added on purpose that if she could not decide right away, he could always convert it into a cash reward instead. But the instant she heard the words cash reward, the maid dropped to her knees without hesitation and loudly declared that she chose strength. Seeing that, Song Yongxiang came to a quiet conclusion. This maid probably had a story of her own hidden behind her. But helping people with stories like that had always suited Song Yongxiang's temperament, and as time later proved, that little impulse of his ended up giving the Eastern continent a truly formidable, legendary female general. After that little duel-related episode ended, everyone returned to eating, drinking, and making merry. The banquet continued through several more lively rounds of drinks. Only Song Yunrui, who had been defeated by Song Yongxiang, never returned to the table. It seemed Song Yongxiang had gone a little too hard on that cousin of his this time, and later on he would probably need to find a chance to talk things out with him. Someone else who behaved similarly was Kong Xingxin. She claimed she was not feeling well and left the banquet early. After that, however, neither side brought up the marriage contract again. The rest of the banquet passed in outward harmony, even though everyone clearly had their own thoughts and plans. It was only when the old marquis finally grew tired that he officially declared the Song family banquet over, and everyone gradually dispersed. Song Yongxiang had only been home for one day, and already so many things had happened. As for what strange mess would come next, even he could not say. Right now, all he wanted was to return to the eastern courtyard and get some proper sleep. But just then, Song Yongxiang suddenly sensed a familiar aura rushing straight toward him at high speed. So who exactly was coming? He immediately told Ajin and Aga to go bring the person over first. Song Yongxiang had no intention of finally lying down to rest, only to be dragged back up to deal with trouble. Very soon, the sound of fighting came from not far away. The person getting beaten kept shouting that it was all a misunderstanding, and that he had not even made a move. After Ajin and Aga finished their friendly exchange, Song Yongxiang finally realized that the person who had come was actually Old Master Kong. This old man could not really have thought that, just because he was heaven rank, he could sneak back in and steal the pill, right? If he wanted it that badly, he could have just asked. Song Yongxiang could even have had it delivered to his door. But before Song Yongxiang could finish mocking him, Old Master Kong dropped to his knees with a thud and shouted that from this day forward he was willing to be Song Yongxiang's dog. That instantly left Song Yongxiang at a loss. In truth, not long after the Song family banquet had ended, Kong Jing and Kong Fan had already privately discussed things once. Old Master Kong blamed everything that happened tonight on the fact that he had underestimated the Song family too much beforehand. Before coming here, he had never imagined that the Eastern Courtyard alone hid several heaven-rank experts. Hearing his father say that, Kong Fan was completely dumbstruck. With his cultivation, he simply had no way of perceiving any of that earlier. After tonight's events, Old Master Kong fully realized that all of the old intelligence on the Song family had probably been wrong. Back then, after the sudden death of the late Emperor of Tiandu, Grand Tutor Zhang, the imperial father-in-law, pushed for the 8 generals' imperial selection, while the 4 great families of Tiandu City had all long since chosen their own sides among the princes. But after the battle at the Imperial Mausoleum, every side suffered massive losses, and 4 of the princes who joined the fight died there. Otherwise, the Northern Suppression King would never have had the chance to reap the final benefit. After that battle, the Zhang family was exterminated, while the Song family was branded with the crime of slaughtering the imperial bloodline and forced to withdraw to the borderlands. Later, it was even said that the Grand Empress Dowager from the Song family in the palace had turned against them and severed ties completely. But after everything he saw tonight, Old Master Kong suddenly formed a new suspicion. What if the Song family had retreated from the very beginning, only to advance later, hiding in the borderlands while quietly building strength? And if that old Song ancestor had not truly fallen back then with Song Yongxiang added on top of that, the Song family's rise again would no longer be a fantasy. After hearing that speculation, Kong Fan felt his whole mind go numb. He too had begun wondering that, if the Song family truly stood on the verge of rising again, where exactly should the Kong family place its bet? At that crucial moment, Old Master Kong said only one thing to Kong Fan, telling him that in a person's life, there are only a few choices that truly matter, and this time, the Kong family could not afford to choose wrong. And after that came the scene of Kong Zheng personally jumping off the flying vessel and turning back to throw himself at the Song family's side. That, however, left Song Yongxiang with a bit of a headache. Should he accept him or not? Meanwhile, over at Yong'an Restaurant, Song Yongxiang's second uncle, Song Bo, was entertaining young Master Zhang from Zhangzhou over dinner. And at that moment, young Master Zhang was lavishing praise on the jar of aged wine Song Bo had brought out. He even said it was a rare heavenly treasure among wines, and asked where Song Bo had bought it, saying he wanted to bring a few jars back for the ancestor of his family to taste. Hearing that, Song Bo could not help recalling old memories. This wine had originally been brewed by his third brother back when the Song family still lived in Tiandu City, but that brewing method had long since been lost. The wine brought out tonight was all old stock left from those years. Over the years, Song Bo had only ever been willing to open one of these jars when he met someone he truly respected. After hearing that, young Master Zhang first expressed repeated regret, then immediately kept telling the steward to fill his cup again and again. That made Song Bo's heart ache, because every jar of that wine really was one less jar left in the world. Just then, second uncle's assistant stepped forward and informed him that Madam had sent word urging him to return home at once. At the same time, concubine Zhao had also sent the same message, and both women said they had important matters to discuss with him. After hearing that, young Master Zhang told second uncle to go handle things at home first. After all, the deal between the Zhang family and the Song family had already been discussed almost to the end. Second uncle then left with 2 subordinates. The man on his left was Zhang Xiao, executive assistant to the president of Mushui Group. The woman on his right was called Mai Dai, a Taihe mercenary who also served as second uncle's personal bodyguard. On the way back, second uncle instructed Maidai to strengthen security over the next few days and secretly ensured the safety of the Zhang family's second young master. He had a feeling that the Zhang family's eldest young master would likely make a move soon. After arranging the business matters, second uncle finally asked about the situation at home. He could not understand why both of his wives were in such a hurry to call him back tonight. In truth, the assistant had already learned during the dinner gathering that Song Yunrui had suffered a crushing defeat at Song Yongxiang's hands. And that was exactly what the first madam wanted to discuss with second uncle. The moment he heard this, second uncle flew into a rage and snapped that if that useless son had lost, then he had lost. What was there even to discuss? Zhang Zhao then reminded him that madam's concern was not about winning, losing, or saving face. She wanted to discuss whether second uncle should personally go to the eastern courtyard and apologize to Song Yongxiang. Hearing that, second uncle immediately understood. With his wife's personality, for her to say something like that, could it be that his nephew had truly returned this time with some extraordinary opportunity? Then he could not help complaining to Zhang Zhao again about his disappointing younger son, saying the boy had no depth at all. As he spoke, he casually patted Zhang Zhao on the shoulder and sighed that if Yunrui were even half as capable as Zhang Zhao, he could finally rest easy. The moment he said that, Zhang Zhao immediately stepped back and said he was not worthy of such praise. Seeing that reaction, second uncle told him there were no outsiders here, so there was no need to be so distant. He even added that, in the future, he would find a way to bring the two brothers back into the Song family and restore their proper roots. Hearing that promise, Zhang Zhao immediately said that the two brothers wanted nothing more than to fulfill their mother's dying wish someday. At this point, second uncle no longer intended to keep hiding the truth. He admitted directly that, when it came to their mother, the Song family had indeed wronged her. Meanwhile, at the Iron Wall Army garrison southeast of Yang'an City, Song Yongxiang's first uncle was still working late, reviewing military affairs large and small. While he was handling official business, Captain Zhang Mu came to request an audience. He had received a letter that evening from the Shishui Nation side of the Southern Wasteland Joint Defense Line. In the letter, General Liu said they had a batch of newly mass-produced Star Soul constructs that would soon pass through Tiandu Nation territory on the way to the Southern Wasteland Desert for live combat testing, and they now needed First Uncle's approval to proceed. After learning the details of their personnel and equipment, First Uncle approved the request very quickly. However, he also told Zhang Mu that 2 squads had to be arranged to secretly escort them, and, most importantly, the entire matter had to be handled in complete secrecy. After receiving the order, Zhang Mu immediately said he would make the arrangements and then turned to leave the commander's main tent. Right after that, First Uncle's personal chef asked in confusion why they had to come all the way into Tiandu Nation territory to test new units. Was the Shishui Nation really not worried about leaking information? In response, First Uncle explained that alliances between nations were often delicate. Only by maintaining a certain balance of strength and letting the other side clearly see, it could long-term stability and harmony be preserved. This was not the first time such an arrangement had been made. Meanwhile, back at the Song residence, Song Yongxiang was genuinely a little surprised by Old Master Kong's kneeling surrender, so he asked Kong Zheng whether he had truly weighed all the pros and cons in his heart. To make such a major decision in a single night, he must have received some kind of heavy shock. Inwardly, Kong Zheng was miserable, but he could not possibly say it out loud, because he knew very well that, if he did not make this choice, those few figures behind Song Yongxiang could take his life in his sleep at any moment. So all he could do was put on a sincere face and say that the Kong family had always obeyed the Song family from past to present. If the Song family did not despise him, then he, Kong Zheng, was even willing to enter the Song residence as a servant. In truth, Kong Zheng did not actually want to lower himself like that the moment he opened his mouth. But when even heaven rank experts in the Song residence could only serve as gate attendants and maids like King Dai and the others, what right did a newly advanced heaven rank like him have to ask for anything more? Seeing how pitiful he looked, Song Yongxiang told him to stand up and speak first. No matter what, Kong Zheng was still an elder among the people here, so some dignity had to be left to him. But since Kong Zheng had just said himself that he was willing to serve the Song residents with absolute loyalty, Song Yongxiang really did happen to think of a task he could assign to him. The moment he heard that Song Yongxiang had a task for him, Kong Zheng actually dropped to his knees again and hurriedly swore that as long as it was something Song Yongxiang ordered, he would give it everything he had. In Song Yongxiang's memory, aside from the Kong family, there should still be 4 other family ancestors in Yang'an City whose cultivation was stuck at peak earth rank. And the task Song Yongxiang intended to give Kong Zheng was to take these 4 barrier-breaking pills and make a trip on his behalf, helping those old ancestors break through to heaven rank with the power of the pills. The moment Kong Zheng saw the pills in his hand, he was so moved that tears nearly came out. If he had met Song Yangxiang a few years earlier, he never would have had to waste 5 years in bitter closed-door cultivation. But Kong Jing was not a fool. He quickly realized that Song Yangxiang intended to use these pills to pull those families over and bring them under the Song residence's influence. To push his motivation a little further, Song Yangxiang also laid out a reward on the spot. If Kong Zheng handled this beautifully, then the Heaven Spirit Pill in Song Yangxiang's hand would be his prize. After settling that matter, Song Yangxiang brought up something even more important and decided to make it clear that very night, stating that as for the marriage agreement between the Song and Kong families, in his view, it should just be, but before he could finish, Kong Jing immediately dropped to his knees again and hurriedly declared that he would go right back and send his granddaughter to Song Yangxiang's room. He even said that Kong Jingjin no longer deserved to be Song Yangxiang's proper wife, and that if Song Yangxiang did not mind, she could still serve as a concubine or even just a bedmaid. Song Yangxiang found that impossible to accept. He had only called Kong Zheng over because he wanted the Kong family to come up with a decent reason to cancel the engagement themselves. As for what Kong Jingxin thought, he had no interest in interfering, and even less interest in caring. Hearing that, Kong Jing froze on the spot. He had never imagined that ending the engagement could be made to sound so simple. Still, Song Yangxiang believed Kong Jing was a smart man. Once he went back, he should know what to do without needing further instruction. If the Kong family truly offended the Song residents to the end, then their future prospects would be finished. After understanding Song Yangxiang's meaning, Kong Jing hurriedly promised that he would definitely handle the matter properly. At the same time, Song Yangxiang also told him that he could leave now. Yet even after hearing that, Kong Jing still stood there trembling and did not dare move. After personally experiencing the true strength of the Song residents, Kong Jing still could not believe that Song Yangxiang would let him go back so easily. With that, Song Yangxiang could only remind Kong Jing a little helplessly to leave through the main gate this time. If he ever came back to the Song residence again, he had better stop acting like some wandering martial hero leaping over roofs and walls, because that only made it easier for people to beat him up. After hearing such a direct and sincere answer, Old Master Kong finally relaxed and honestly set off on his way home. As for the decision Song Yangxiang had just made, Uncle Song Mu gave him a serious warning. The Kong family was probably not truly surrendering. Most likely, they were simply afraid of the Song residents using force against them, or else they were trying to place a bet on the Song family and make a political gamble. Ajin expressed almost the same view, and he also reported that after Kong Jingxin slipped away earlier, she had immediately gone to find that brother Sun Xia of hers. After hearing all of that, Aga simply raised 2 fingers sideways across his throat, making his meaning perfectly clear. Tonight's darkness was ideal for wiping out a family. After listening to them, Song Yangxiang quickly calmed the mood and made it clear that things were not at that point yet. The truth was that the decision he had made was always meant to lay the groundwork for what was coming. Before long, Yang'an City would be facing a real war. On that day, millions of ferocious beasts would pour through the walls. Countless civilians would be forced to endure life and death separations in the flames of battle. When that moment came, every extra bit of controllable strength would mean one more spark of hope preserved for the Tiandu nation and for the human race. In the face of national rise and fall, in the face of survival itself, the greater picture had to come first. There was no sense wasting strength on family grudges and petty personal pride. After hearing Song Yangxiang say all of that, King Dai's gaze toward him changed completely. In her eyes, the young master standing before her suddenly seemed far taller than before. Uncle Song Mu, who had watched Song Yangxiang grow up, felt exactly the same. At that moment, in his eyes, Song Yangxiang's back looked more and more like Third Master's had once looked. Of course, Song Yangxiang himself knew perfectly well that those words had partly been for effect. In the end, the real goal was to use both kindness and pressure to keep those families under control and squeeze as much value out of them as possible. When the Southern Wasteland Beast Tide came, more combat strength would always be better. Once everything had been settled, Song Yangxiang told them to prepare a better sky shuttle for him tomorrow, because he would be traveling far. Meanwhile, on the inner side of the Southern Wasteland Great Wall, a transport ship from Shishui Nation had appeared. Leading that group was Liu Ning, Deputy General of Shishui Nation's garrison forces stationed at the Southern Wasteland Joint Defense Line. Not far from them, a Wei Yuan mech was rapidly rushing in their direction. The one arriving was Zhang Mu, Right Captain of the 2nd Battalion of the Iron Wall Army. His purpose was to deliver the travel clearance personally approved by Song Yangxiang's first uncle as quickly as possible. After the document handoff was completed, both sides left separately to report back, and there was no extra exchange between them. After General Liu returned to the transport ship, she immediately dropped to one knee and saluted a technician, addressing her as Your Highness. The young woman standing before her with striking dual-colored hair was none other than Princess Langwan, the younger half-sister of the Shishui Nation's Empress. The 2nd-generation mass-produced Star Soul General model of the Shishui Nation, the Xuanu type, was a project personally overseen by her. The moment she received the travel clearance, The princess looked at the three machines in front of her with near obsessive fascination. She was already dying to find some ferocious beasts and put her three little darlings through real combat testing. Early the next morning after the family banquet ended, Song Yongxiang arrived at the Song residence landing platform together with Uncle Song Mu and Shia Bijay. Everything he had instructed the night before had already been prepared in a single night. One look at the shuttle was enough to tell it had serious power behind it. With this thing, Song Yongxiang would be able to move quickly even through the southern wasteland desert. And beyond the performance, they had even matched the shuttle's color scheme to the clothes he usually wore. It had to be said, the old hands in the family were incredibly efficient when it came to getting things done. Still, because the preparation time had been short, old Xia wanted to personally fine-tune it one more time before letting Song Yongxiang use it, just to make sure nothing could go wrong. That part did not really need to trouble old Xia too much. Song Yongxiang himself had plenty of experience when it came to mechanical tuning, so he could just check it personally later. Before either of them could react, Song Yongxiang had already taken control of the shuttle and shot off, heading straight toward the southern wasteland desert. Both Uncle Song Mu and King Dai, the head maid, were visibly worried about that. Originally, they had wanted to assign several shadow guards and a few maids to accompany Song Yongxiang on the trip, but Song Yongxiang had already considered their concerns. Compared to traveling with others, moving alone gave him much more freedom and flexibility, which was why he chose not to bring anyone along. More importantly, Uncle Song Mu and King Dai had a far more critical task to handle, one that would directly affect the future of both the Song family and Yong'an City. The storage talismans Song Yongxiang had just handed them were filled with cultivation pills. Over the next stretch of time, he needed the two of them to select promising candidates from the Song family's maid corps and shadow guards and do everything possible to cultivate more high-level combat strength. Only then did they truly realize that Song Yongxiang's strength had already gone far beyond what it once was. And since that task could only be entrusted to true insiders like them, neither of them raised any further objections to his arrangement. After settling everything, Song Yongxiang told Uncle Song Mu to pass a message to the old marquis for him. This trip would be as short as 3 to 5 days, and at the longest, no more than 10 before he returned. Meanwhile, in the reception hall of the central courtyard, Second Uncle's family sat there properly, waiting for the old marquis to wake up. During that time, Second Uncle, whose strength and hearing were both unusually sharp, vaguely caught the sound of a high-performance shuttle streaking overhead. That scene made Madame Cheng think of the days when Song Yongxiang used to drive flying shuttles out just to mess around, but she quickly changed her tone and asked Second Uncle whether nephew Yongxiang might have gone out early this morning to handle something. Right after that, she could not help complaining to Second Uncle again. She had already told him last night to go see Song Yongxiang, but he insisted on waiting until this morning. And then, once morning came, they had still chosen to come to Father first. In response, Second Uncle remained as calm as ever and said there was no need to rush. It would be safer to first ask Father what he thought. Without Father's approval, even if the three of them threw away all pride, they still might not be able to get their hands on the treasures Song Yongxiang had. But just as he finished saying that, the old marquis happened to walk into the reception hall and casually asked what treasure they had been discussing. The instant they saw the old marquis appear, Second Uncle's whole family shot to their feet and bowed in greeting. As their father, the old marquis naturally knew exactly what his children were thinking. So he immediately told everyone present to explain honestly what they had come here so early for. Second Uncle, who usually handled the family's business affairs, did not bother to hide much. He turned and explained that he had been tied up with other matters last night and had failed to personally welcome his nephew home, so he wanted to host a banquet at Yong'an restaurant tonight to make up for it. But before he could continue, the old marquis cut him off directly. In the end, he had already seen through their little scheme. Was it not simply that they had their eyes on the pills in Song Yongxiang's hands? Once his intentions were exposed so openly, Second Uncle immediately put on a wronged expression and said that since Song Yongxiang was part of the Song family, if those treasures were entrusted to Mushui Group for operation, the benefits could definitely be maximized. Yet before he could finish that sentence, Song Mu and King Dai entered the reception hall, and their arrival interrupted Second Uncle once again. The reason they had come was to report to the old marquis that Song Yongxiang had just set out alone for the southern wasteland desert to grind beasts, and that he would also be making a trip to the lower domain nation. The moment those words came out, Second Uncle's whole family practically exploded. Neither concubine Zhao nor Second Uncle could believe Song Yongxiang had gone off to hunt ferocious beasts, and Second Uncle even muttered under his breath, wondering if they were sure that brat could come back in one piece. A moment later, Second Uncle suddenly remembered what his elder brother had once said. The southern wasteland desert was crawling with ferocious beasts, and even the Iron Wall army could barely push forward there anymore. If someone went in alone, would that not be no different from courting death? But even that supposedly kindly warning earned him no response at all from Song Mu and King Dai. The two of them acted as if they had not heard a word and simply turned around and walked out of the reception hall. After they left, the old marquis called Second Uncle over and said he had something to show the whole family. Once they saw it, they could decide for themselves whether they still wanted to keep eyeing the treasures in Song Yongxiang's hands. As the footage started playing, the once quiet reception hall quickly filled with nothing but the stunned outbursts of second uncle's family. Meanwhile, Song Yongxiang was already flying at high speed on his sky shuttle. It had to be said, once Uncle Abe had tuned it personally, the thing really did perform on a different level. Just as he was enjoying the ride, a snow-white transport ship suddenly cut across the side of his otherwise straight flight path, and the passengers inside that ship also noticed Song Yongxiang outside piloting his shuttle. The moment their eyes met, Song Yongxiang was already wondering why a transport ship from Sishui Nation would appear inside the Iron Wall Army's defense zone. The princess inside, on the other hand, was much more interested in his piloting skill, but just as she was about to praise him, Song Yongxiang slammed the throttle and vanished right in front of them. That immediately made Princess Ling Huan sigh that the Tiandu Nation really was a land full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. You could run into an expert just about anywhere. Then she jokingly added that, if the Sishui Nation military were not made up entirely of women, she would have loved to drag Song Yongxiang over there and make him help her test all sorts of her little darlings. On the 4th day after Song Yongxiang set out for the southern wasteland desert, a transport ship from Nanzhou Mecha Martial Academy arrived at the Song residence. The first person to step off was none other than Su, the half-saint, one of the famed 3 swords of Nanzhou. Across all of the Tiandu Nation, Song Yongxiang was probably the only person who could get him to personally escort a shipment. Coming with him was Cheng Yi, Song Yongxiang's former assistant instructor. The moment this guy stuck his head out, he started shouting that he had never expected Song Yongxiang's family to be this rich. Since these were Song Yongxiang's teachers, the one who naturally stepped forward to receive them was King Dai, the head maid of the Eastern Courtyard. As a half-step saint, Su Heming noticed King Dai's cultivation the instant he saw her. Even a head maid possessing heaven-rank cultivation was enough to make Su Heming quietly marvel at how much strength the Song residence was hiding. But the dim-witted Cheng Yi clearly had no such insight. He was too busy admiring the head maid's looks and figure. A shallow guy like that really had no right complaining that his cultivation lagged behind Song Yongxiang's. In truth, this whole trip had been arranged by Song Yongxiang before he left. After getting home, he added several more requirements, so this visit was specifically to deliver what he asked for. Then, under King Dai's lead, they slowly made their way toward the reception hall in the outer courtyard. Along the way, Instructor Cheng was practically overflowing with emotion. He really was jealous that Song Yongxiang got to live in a place like this. It even made the instructor Wu Pei he used to have a crush on feel a lot less appealing. Because of that, he had even started thinking about quitting the academy and coming to the Song residence to apply for a job as head of security. He just did not know whether the Song family had any cultivation requirements for gate guards. He was strangely confident in his black rank cultivation too, already imagining himself hiding his strength after getting in, working as a lowly servant, then pulling off some hero saves the beauty moment at the perfect time, and winning the hearts of all the women around him. Seeing him like that, Su Heming could not help taking a jab at him, telling him that at his age, he should at least learn some restraint instead of wearing the word desire all over his face. Meanwhile, the old marquis in the reception hall had already learned that guests from Nanzhou Mecha Martial Academy had arrived, so he told a maid to go to the northern courtyard and asked Song Yunjin to come over and help receive them. A few minutes later, King Dai led Su Heming and Cheng Yi into the reception hall. Even Elder Su had not expected Marquis Song himself to receive them in person. The level of courtesy actually left him a little flattered. The moment Su Heming stepped in, the old marquis immediately recognized him as Su the half-saint, the foremost of Nanzhou's 3 swords, and he and Uncle Songmu both stepped forward to greet him with the highest level of formality. In response, Elder Su said modestly that in front of Marquis Song, who would dare call himself a half-saint? The moment those words came out, Cheng Yi's brain practically stopped working. If even the famous Su the half-saint did not dare claim that title in front of the old marquis, then just how strong was the old marquis really? After everyone had taken their seats, the old marquis even deliberately put on a stern face and said that Song Yongxiang had no sense of propriety at all, daring to trouble Elder Su into personally delivering goods for him, and that he would definitely give the boy a proper lecture when he got back. Hearing that, Elder Su quickly stepped in for Song Yongxiang and explained that this trip had been his own initiative and had nothing to do with Song Yongxiang, so the old marquis should not take it to heart. Just as they finished speaking, Song Yunjin also arrived at the reception hall. The old marquis then explained to her that the reason she had been called over was because the new type unit Song Yongxiang had asked the academy to build also included a badge for her Scarlet Luan army. But before the old marquis could even formally introduce the guests, Cheng Yi had already lost control of his thoughts again and started spiraling into nonsense in his own head. Seeing that look on his face, Elder Su immediately cut in and told him to mind his image and quickly show everyone the goods they had brought. Cheng Yi then hurriedly opened the portable cargo case. Inside were the specially modified Wei Yuan units rushed out, according to Song Yongxiang's design plans. The first batch, 30 units in total, had been delivered to the Song residence for now. At the same time, Over in the southern wasteland desert, a one-sided slaughter was playing out, with ferocious beast corpses scattered everywhere. Against this level of low-tier beasts, Song Yongxiang could not even be bothered to get serious. A casual slash was enough to kill them. After cutting them down, he also did not forget to dig out the spatial crystals from their bodies. These colorful crystals really did look a little gaudy, but there was no denying that storing resources like this came with a certain shamelessly rich kind of flair. Thinking it over, he had probably killed a little too many beasts these past few days. Right now, taking out 1/10 of the pile would already be enough to exchange for the medicinal ingredients, while another portion could be kept for upgrading and strengthening the mass-produced units. As for the rest, selling them for money would not be a bad deal either. But beyond all that, there was even better news. After several straight days of fighting, Song Yongxiang's early-stage Earth rank cultivation had finally been completely stabilized. Since that was the case, before heading to Sand Sculpture City, he might as well push himself all the way to late-stage Earth rank first. What Song Yongxiang did not expect was that the moment he broke through to late-stage Earth rank, those beasts would seize the chance to surround him from all sides. From the looks of it, they clearly wanted to tear him apart alive. Fortunately, before making his breakthrough, Song Yongxiang had already set up 3 layers of defensive formations in advance. 4 symbols, 6 harmonies, and primordial unity. Even if there really were heaven-rank beasts among them, breaking through his formations by force would still take quite some time. Then, with a thunderous boom, a streak of blue lightning crashed down from the sky, and with that heavenly phenomenon descending, Song Yongxiang's breakthrough into late-stage Earth rank was officially complete. On top of that, he could clearly feel that his current state was at least 3 times stronger than in his previous life. At this rate, once he stepped into Saint rank in the future, his combat power might surpass his past self by 5 times, maybe even 10. Just as Song Yongxiang was checking his condition, a ferocious roar dragged him straight back to reality. Those trash mobs had spent an entire day trying and still could not break a single heaven-rank defensive formation. They were weak to an almost embarrassing degree. Still, since so many materials had delivered themselves to his door, there was no reason not to accept the gift. The instant Song Yongxiang dismissed all the formations, the surrounding beasts rushed him at once. If it had been any other Star Soul Master, they probably would not even have had the chance to resist. But who was Song Yongxiang? He was Song Yongxiang, the genius of the Yong'an Marquis Manor of the Tiandu Nation. If he actually died to a bunch of low-tier beasts like these, then the Tiandu Nation would have bigger things to worry about. In the middle of the fight, Song Yongxiang suddenly had an idea and ordered the Star-Lord system to copy 2 more of Lu Bu's exclusive weapons, the Skybreaker Claws. With his current strength, he could now barely start using some heaven-rank combat techniques. So this was the perfect chance to test just how powerful Lu Bu's armament could become when fused with heaven-rank skills. As he swung forward with force, a heaven-rank combat technique, Skybreaker Wild Dance, erupted instantly. The power of that move was far beyond what these low-tier beasts could withstand. Once the soul power storm swept through, only scattered remains were left behind. Even Song Yongxiang himself was a little surprised by the result. He had not expected that adding just 1 more Skybreaker Claw would make the whole experience this satisfying. Since that was the case, he figured he might as well test what would happen if he combined the Black Armor Guard's 7-fold wave with these 2 weapons. The moment Skybreaker's 7-fold wave activated, Song Yongxiang's figure turned ghost-like as he darted through the beast horde, and every beast behind him was cut down. Even while killing them, Song Yongxiang did not forget to take the rift crystals from their bodies. Those things were priceless. There was no way he was leaving them behind for free, but when he turned back and looked, he realized that every beast that had surrounded him earlier was already dead. And the craziest part was that, just to avoid damaging the rift crystals, he had already suppressed 70% of his power. Yet even then, these beasts were still this fragile. Once the battle ended, Song Yongxiang gathered all the rift crystals on the ground with his soul power. Looking at the huge pile in his hands, he could not help sighing that today's haul was honestly pretty great. Without even trying, he had ended up with this many again. At this rate, taking them to the lower domain nation might even be enough to trade for an entire city. Thinking that over, Song Yongxiang began making plans. The useful rift crystals should be kept for himself first, while the spare ones could perhaps be sold off to the second prince. They ought to fetch at least over 1 billion. Then again, no. He suddenly remembered that Guy was already broke. Looks like he would have to go find an even richer sucker instead. Just as Song Yongxiang was still thinking about who he could fleece next, a Chongshi-type beast suddenly appeared in the distance. The thing let out a roar and charged at him without the slightest hesitation. Judging from the way it sounded, it was practically saying that unless Song Yongxiang killed it today, nobody was leaving alive. Such enthusiasm really did make it hard for Song Yang to turn it down. Since that was the case, he decided to use this chance to go all out once and see just how strong his full power strike had become. With an explosive boom, that heaven-rank Kong-Kui-type beast was killed on the spot in a single hit. The beast probably never even figured out what had happened before it died. Thinking back, not long ago, Song Yang still had to rely on little tricks and a bitter struggle when dealing with heaven-rank beasts. But now, under his full strength, something at this level had become as fragile as paper. That alone made him far more confident about the city defense battle to come. On top of that, the core crystals inside Heaven Rank Beast were excellent materials for strengthening mass-produced units. If he got the chance, he definitely ought to collect more. Unfortunately, the southern wasteland desert remained outside communication range, so Song Yang could not receive any news from the Song residents. For now, he still had no idea whether Principal Gu and the others had successfully delivered the mass-produced machines. Without noticing it, he had already stayed here for 5 full days. By now, time was starting to get tight, so he needed to head for Sand Sculpture City and settle the real business first. Third great uncle was still waiting for him to bring back the medicine after all. The only problem was that his current position was still very far from the city, and he had no idea whether the Star-Lord system had finished constructing Sao Rin yet. If he could use Sao Rin's flight abilities, the speed would be several times faster than a sky shuttle. Meanwhile, 100 miles outside Sand Sculpture City, the site of that god-rank remnant had already been surrounded by the major families of the lower domain nation. Large numbers of soldiers had also been stationed around it day and night. Not far from the enclosure, a long-haired young man suddenly said that he could clearly sense a god-rank aura inside those crystals. Then he turned back and confidently told the bald man beside him that the Huion family was determined to obtain this god-rank remnant. If they got their hands on it, the family ancestor might be able to take another step forward. That high-spirited young man was none other than Huion Singh, young master of the Huion clan in the lower domain nation. The bald man beside him was Huion Fa, protector of the Huion family. Also arriving by yacht with them was Mai Jin, the first-in-line heir of the Mai family. At the moment, that god-rank remnant was under the control of the Mai family. Because of that, Huion Singh took the initiative to speak with Mai Jin, saying that as long as he worked with the Huion family, Mai Jin definitely would not be the one losing out. Mai Jin naturally caught the meaning hidden in those words, and his interest in cooperating with the Huion family began to grow. Meanwhile, inside a tavern in Sand Sculpture City, a white-haired man stood upstairs and coldly watched the auction of demonkin slave maids taking place below. At the sight of it, Lan Kun, who was himself half demonkin, could barely keep his emotions under control. If he had not still been carrying out a mission, he probably would have stepped in already and rescued those demonkin women himself. Not far from him, however, someone else was secretly observing him as well. The hooded woman was none other than Huang Miaoyin, one of the Sishui nation's 4 saint ranks. The reason she had followed him here was because she had sensed a half-demonkin aura nearby. But after taking a closer look, she realized that he was only an earth-rank mixed blood from the merfolk of the Longhai nation. Even so, Huang Miaoyin still found herself intrigued. She had not expected that the appearance of a god-rank remnant would draw so many forces into Sand Sculpture City. It seemed the real show was